Chapter 1876. Poseidon was naked, and his muscular body was full of wildness. Although Poseidon had avoided Ning Shu's needle, he was still in pain. His divinity seemed to have been damaged. Medusa. Poseidon said through gritted teeth. His blood-red eyes looked around. Show yourself if you can. Ning Shu did not appear. Poseidon had the advantage of not being able to see him. Why should he appear? Ning Shu released the thunder dragon. Poseidon used his trident to fight the dragon. Ning Shu appeared behind Poseidon and compressed the needle. The hair-thin needle pierced into the back of Poseidon's head. Poseidon roared in pain. He seemed to be in extreme pain. Ning Shu closed her eyes and sensed the needle. She was attached to the needle with her mind power. She knew what the needle was doing inside Poseidon's head. Ning Shu used her mind power to check the situation inside Poseidon's head. Although the head was small, it was like a universe inside. Was the head of a god a small world? She sensed a huge, irregular, crystal-clear divinity floating in the air. The needle shot directly into the divinity, and a crack appeared in the divinity. Ning Shu detonated the needles, and the godhead immediately suffered great damage. It was blown to pieces. Ah! Poseidon did not seem to be in pain. He held his head. His eyes were blood-red, and his pupils could no longer be seen. No one knew if he could see. Without the support of the divinity, his power was weakened. He was weak. Poseidon was wrapped around by the thunder dragon. If it tightened its grip, Poseidon would be smashed into pieces and completely annihilated. Ning Shu revealed herself and looked at the dragon-shaped chi-force that was flashing with lightning all over her body. It's you. Ning Shu nodded. It's me. Ning Shu looked at the naked Poseidon. A dagger appeared in his hand. Poseidon looked weak. When he saw the dagger in Ning Shu's hand, he could not help but move. He asked, "What are you doing? Wouldn't it be better to cultivate one's body and mind if one gets rid of the root of evil?" Ning Shu said with a beaming smile. Because of her beautiful face, her smile was like a spring breeze, but the words that came out of her sexy and captivating mouth made people tremble in fear. Vicious woman. Poseidon could not help but roar. You are so vicious that you cannot be tolerated in this world. Even if I die, there will still be divine punishment. A vicious person like you won't be able to survive divine punishment. In Prometheus, Zeus once took revenge on mankind for stealing the fire seed. When Zeus saw the flames rising in the human world, he was furious and decided to kill these unruly people. So he ordered Hephaestus, the god of fire, who was famous for his craftsmanship, to make a statue of a beautiful woman. Athena gave it life with magic, Hermes taught it language, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, gave it all kinds of charm. Zeus named this beautiful figure Pandora, which means, woman with all gifts. Because the gods had given her a gift that would endanger the human race. Zeus sent this young woman to the human world. She went straight to Epimetheus, the younger brother of Prometheus, and asked him to accept the gift from Zeus. Zeus was also quite interesting. You created to help mankind, I let your brother destroy mankind. Prometheus had warned his brother not to accept any gift from Zeus on Mount Olympus, and to immediately return it. But this adorable brother was so enchanted by this woman that he forgot this warning. Pandora walked in front of Epimetheus and suddenly opened the lid of the box. The disasters inside flew out like black smoke. They included disease, disaster, jealousy, theft, greed, sin, and so on. At the bottom of the box was the only beautiful thing left, hope. But Pandora followed the warning of Zeus, the father of the gods, and quickly closed the lid before it flew out. So hope was forever locked in the box. Since then, all kinds of disasters filled the earth, sky, and sea. Diseases spread through the human race night after night, wreaking havoc, but they were silent. In order to exterminate mankind, mankind had to endure all kinds of disasters and death caused by all kinds of diseases. The gods' attitude towards mankind was not so friendly. You won't survive. Once the apocalypse is triggered, only the truly kind can survive, Poseidon roared. Ning Shu brushed his hair. At least I'm still alive now. You're sure I'll die first? Your actions will affect the entire human race. The entire human race will suffer because of you. Poseidon sneered. Because of the pain, the muscles on his face spasmed from time to time. I can't even control my own fate. I can't care about others, and I can't bear the fate of the entire human race. Mankind will not go extinct, Ning Shu said calmly, waving directly at Poseidon's lower body. He directly chopped off Poseidon's right and wrong root. Rapists were unforgivable. They vented their desires on the weak and powerless body without any scruples. Ning Shu stomped on the ground and looked coldly at the pained Poseidon. Golden blood flowed down Poseidon's leg. Poseidon sneered. Ning Shu looked at Poseidon and sneered. Are you cursing me? Athena did the same, but she's dead now. The world no longer has a god named Athena. You. Poseidon's face twisted with disbelief, anger, confusion, and fear. Why? Why did he have to go to this extent? You used to be Athena's priest. You worshipped and worshipped Athena. You killed Athena like this. You have no fear or belief in the gods. When Poseidon spoke, his voice trembled because the pain in his body was too much for him to bear. He felt his life force fading away because his divinity was destroyed. Why? I believe in myself. I don't have any prejudice or opinion against the gods. But what did the gods do to me? And what about the heroes under the banner of destroying evil? Ning Shu's dagger stabbed into Poseidon's chest. There was a beating heart, but it was very weak now. You are a vicious woman. Golden blood flowed from the corner of Poseidon's mouth. Men like you have to be ruthless to achieve great things. You don't care about trifles. You can achieve great things. Women are vicious. It seems that women shouldn't have ambitions. They should live a peaceful life. They shouldn't love power and stand aloof from worldly affairs. It is unforgivable for women to have ambitions and tricks. Women should be pure and kind or smart and have no ambition for power. There are many different kinds of people, but women can only be one type. You must be kind and have no ambition. 39/39163/L. Chapter 1877. Her biggest wish was to find someone she loved and spend the rest of her life with him. She had to be naive and sweet. Love had to be spoiled. Growth had to be forced by bad people. All she wanted was for the man to be able to control her. She was working hard for her goals. Sacrificing anything was her business. An outsider like you had no right to say anything. Should women be born ignorant, pure, and kind? Should they not be ambitious and ambitious? Should they not take the initiative to pursue fame and power? She was willing to sacrifice herself. That was her choice. She was willing to live for herself. That was her choice. She wanted to live like a human. Ning Shu sneered and twirled the dagger. Poseidon groaned. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Golden blood spurted out from his chest. Ning Shu quickly caught the bottle. Poseidon was speechless. This woman was really evil. Evil human. Ning Shu was catching the blood when he felt a huge pressure behind him. The danger made his hair stand on end. Ning Shu quickly dodged. However, the bottle in Ning Shu's hand was broken by a bolt of lightning. Golden blood flowed to the ground. Ning Shu looked at Zeus, who had suddenly appeared. He smiled. His smile was like a flower, and his eyes were curved. He looked like a cute girl. However, when Zeus saw Poseidon, who was entangled by the lightning dragon, he was not at all fooled by Ning Shu's smile. Zeus felt that this girl had a similar temperament to his wife, Hera. She had a strong personality. Hera was the queen of heaven. She had great authority. Even the gods were afraid of her. She was domineering and jealous. She also liked to fight. Even though this girl appeared to be a beautiful and fragile woman, she was actually a poisonous rose. God King. Poseidon looked at his brother. Even though he had almost no feelings for him, he could not help but feel conflicted. This was especially so before his death. Zeus was majestic. He looked at Poseidon, who was in a sorry state. He did not even have any manhood left. He was crushed to a pulp on the ground. It was unbearable to look at. What a useless piece of trash. A human woman has done this to you, Zeus said with a frown. He then dispersed the thunder dragon that was wrapped around Poseidon. Ning Shu clasped his hands behind his back, his face expressionless. So what if she was a woman? Was it humiliating to be done in this way by a woman? There was something even more humiliating. Without the restraints, Poseidon lay in a pool of blood. The flesh below his navel was a mess. Zeus looked at Poseidon, who looked like he was about to die. He could not help but frown. Get up. Poseidon wanted to get up, but he had no strength left. Poseidon's body was destroyed. This again, another prime was gone, and Zeus was about to explode. Ning Shu smiled. Zeus looked at Ning Shu and said, "This is very funny." "No, this is a victorious smile. I'm smiling. I love to smile. Can't I?" Ning Shu retorted. "You're in charge of the heavens and the earth, and you're even in charge of my laughter." This was the first time he had met someone who looked down on a god. Zeus raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why?" Another person asked her why. Why did she do this? Was her action so outrageous, so rebellious, and so stupid? Was it not stupid to go against a god? It's simple. You want to kill me, so I have to make the first move. Ning Shu shrugged. He could not just lie there and let them kill him. He could also be smart enough to kill himself first. You have offended a god. You have blasphemed a god. Zeus looked down at Ning Shu. He was high up, holding thunder in his hand, ready to judge Ning Shu. Ning Shu's ears had grown calluses from listening to these words. These gods were always talking about the gods. There was no room for disrespect, no room for disobedience, and no room for rebellion. Everything depended on one's mood. Even a god could not do anything about it. For example, Apollo had a son called Asclepius. He could heal and save people. He could even bring the dead back to life. However, this broke the natural order. Hell was empty. Hades was furious. He went to Zeus for judgment, but Zeus killed Asclepius with thunder. Although Apollo was sad, there was nothing he could do. Kindness required the ability to protect oneself. It also required the ability to see the big picture and act appropriately. Ning Shu floated up and stood facing the god King Zeus. Zeus frowned when he saw Ning Shu's actions. No one had ever been able to stand on the same level as him. Even the gods had their own unspoken rules to find their own position. If he was a human, he would have prostrated himself in front of a god. Zeus finally understood how Athena and Poseidon felt. They had met such a ruthless human being, yet they had been looked down upon and killed by him. Damn it! However, Zeus was as good as Athens and Poseidon. Where did Ning Shu get his strength? He had the ability to kill a god. He was a threat to the Olympian gods. Zeus felt a strong sense of crisis. He was afraid that this was a test for the gods. Zeus held the thunder in his hand, and a strong divine aura erupted from his body. The entire sea palace shook, and the sea began to churn. The patrols outside the temple were terrified. They did not know what was going on. The divine aura that erupted from the temple stopped them. The temple was like the bloody mouth of a monster. Once you entered, you could not leave. Therefore, the patrols ran away with their tails between their legs. They ran away to see what the Sea Palace was doing. Zeus silently raised his position and looked down at Ning Shu. Where did your strength come from? Who gave it to you? What are your intentions? Ning Shu shook his head. Oh, no one gave it to me. My strength is my own. If you say it was given to me, then it was given to me by God. I have no intentions. I said I want to live. If you want me to die, then I can only fight with all my strength. A trace of contempt flashed across Zeus' handsome face. Life and death had long been determined. Pluto controlled the underworld. Ning Shu smiled. Everyone will go to the underworld, but there is no rule about when I will go. At least I will not be killed by you. Ning Shu said softly, I don't know if Poseidon and Athena will go to the underworld. Oh, no. They have been completely annihilated. Even their souls are gone. How can they go to the underworld? Zeus narrowed his eyes. Was he provoking him? No one had ever dared to talk to him like this. Zeus looked at Ning Shu and suddenly said, You want to become a god? It doesn't matter. Is it that important to become a god or not? Aren't there people who can't resist the temptation of becoming a god? It just means that gods aren't that impressive. Ning Shu smiled, revealing her white and neat teeth. A beauty should smile more. 39/39163/L Chapter 1878. Rather than calling these people gods, it would be better to call them primitive people in the guise of gods. The identity of gods wasn't that noble. In the end, the people who dominated the various planes and worlds were human beings. Then why are you doing these things? Zeus asked Ning Shu. It was clearly throwing an egg at a rock. There was no reason, and no benefit. There was nothing to be gained. There was simply something wrong with her head. Ning Shu asked, Will you let me go? Blasphemy against the gods is unforgivable, Zeus said majestically. See, who was the idiot here? It was so obvious, yet he still asked her why. What was he after? Ning Shu chuckled. Zeus narrowed his eyes and said, The divine punishment is to punish people like you who blaspheme against the gods. The oracle is supreme, so your resistance will only make your end more miserable. Ning Shu asked, Then should I lie down and let you kill me? Even if it was a last-minute struggle, she would bite off a piece of flesh from them, or she would die in vain. Even if her current actions seemed very stupid, she still had to fight like a cornered beast. Zeus suddenly laughed. His face looked dazzling, handsome, and charming. Actually, I don't want you to die so early. Ning Shu blinked her eyes. Should she kneel down and thank God for his grace? Zeus looked down at Ning Shu. I suddenly thought of a punishment. I want you to try it. Last time, the eagle pecked your heart and liver. It wasn't that scary. Oh, was he playing psychological warfare now? Ning Shu put his hands behind his back and asked with a smile, What kind of torture? Put you in a closed bathtub with only your head exposed. Smear goat's milk and honey from the bees on the cliff on your body, attracting all kinds of insects, snakes, and ants to gnaw on you. But you won't die because of this. Feed you every day, excrete in the bathtub, and soak in filth. You can clearly feel the gnawing of maggots. Zeus looked at Ning Shu with the holy light of the gods on his face, but he was talking about torture. Ning Shu's expression didn't change. Zeus asked, Aren't you afraid? I'm scared, of course I'm scared. Ning Shu said, I also have a torture method. Do you want to hear it? The corner of Zeus's mouth twitched. She didn't look like she was afraid, and she was even discussing with him. Ning Shu ignored the strange look on Zeus' face and said, "There is a form of torture called rat burrowing. That is, a person and a rat are locked in a closed space, and then a fire is lit. The rat is very afraid of fire, so it will keep burrowing to avoid the fire. If it can't break the iron cage, it will burrow on the person's body. After the torture is over, the prisoner's body will be full of bloody holes, and his intestines will hang out from the bloody holes." When humans tortured and killed their own kind or other animals, the tricks they came up with could be said to be unique. They could be as cruel and bloody as possible. Zeus looked at Ning Shu silently. Just like Poseidon said, "You are a vicious woman." Ning Shu smiled and said, "You flatter me. Compared to you guys, I definitely can't compare. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Since you want to talk back to me, then let's talk back. If you want to fight, then let's fight. How dare you?" Zeus's voice was like thunder, and it shook the sea palace. "You killed gods. You killed Athena and Poseidon. You can't atone for your sins." Zeus held the thunder, and his divine power made it difficult for people to breathe. Ning Shu shook his head. "I didn't kill them. How can I, a human, kill a god? A god is not so useless. Poseidon and Athena committed suicide." Zeus was speechless. When Zeus heard Ning Shu's words, he almost choked on his saliva. He had never seen anyone talk nonsense in front of a god. He despised a god, killed a god, and now lied to a god. He had never seen such an unscrupulous person. If he didn't kill him, he wouldn't be able to vent his anger. Ning Shu glared at Zeus, and his eyes were as big as copper bells. He looked like he was about to explode. Ning Shu quickly turned invisible. Even though Ning Shu was invisible, Zeus could still sense Ning Shu's presence based on the fluctuations. He struck Ning Shu with the power of thunder. Zeus's thunder was very strong. Even though Ning Shu could absorb the power of thunder, this thunder was too strong. It made Ning Shu's body numb, and it took him a while to absorb the thunder. But even after absorbing it, the thunder still made Ning Shu's dantian hurt. No wonder it was the thunder of the Thunder Lord. It was so unbearable. Even though the thunder entered Ning Shu's dantian, it wanted to break out and return to Zeus's hand. Ning Shu released the thunder dragon to relieve the discomfort in his dantian. The thunder dragon rushed towards Zeus. When Zeus saw the thunder dragon, he was very angry. He was the Thunder Lord, and now someone was using his thing to deal with him. It was simply a joke. The thunder in Zeus's hand directly cut the thunder dragon. The thunder dragon was immediately scattered, and the power of thunder was absorbed by Zeus's hand. Zeus withdrew the power of thunder, and a few thin needles flew towards him at high speed. Zeus dodged the thin needles, and the thin needles turned a corner and rushed towards Zeus. Zeus was a prideful person. He had avoided this thing previously because Athena and Poseidon had both been killed by it. Now that he had avoided it once, it was still chasing after him. Zeus' pride as the god of gods did not allow him to avoid it again. Zeus used his shield to block the needle. Although the needle was small, once the compressed violent power inside was disturbed by the outside world, it would directly explode. Zeus was shaken by the huge force and flew back. He hit a pillar, and the pillar was directly broken. The crystal-like sea palace was on the verge of collapse. Although it was a big battle, Zeus didn't suffer any injuries. However, Zeus's complexion couldn't be any darker. He looked around the main hall of the sea palace, closed his eyes slightly, and then opened them. He could vaguely see Ning Shu's figure. Although he couldn't see her clearly, he could still capture her location. Zeus raised the thunder dragon in his hand, and a fierce thunder dragon slashed towards Ning Shu. No god would be able to withstand such power. Ning Shu saw such a terrible power, and of course, he wasn't stupid enough to resist it. If he was seriously injured and was caught by Zeus, he didn't need to think to know how difficult the following days would be. Ning Shu didn't think that he would be treated well, especially after killing 2 gods and attacking a god. He couldn't escape the crime of killing a god. What if Zeus used all the torture methods on him? Moreover, Zeus had already lost his temper and was now in a fit of rage. Chapter 1879. Ning Shu dodged the thunderbolt, which struck the walls and pillars of the sea palace. The sea palace was unable to bear the heavy burden and was on the verge of collapse. One of the walls collapsed under the ravaging power of the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt did not hit Ning Shu and chased after Ning Shu. At the same time, it continued to destroy the sea palace. In the end, the sea palace could not bear the heavy burden and collapsed with a rumble, turning into ruins. The patrols in the distance saw that the ocean palace had been reduced to rubble and felt unwell. What happened? Where was the ocean god? Ning Shu swam out of the ruins and directly swam to the surface of the sea. Zeus drove the chariot behind him and chased after Ning Shu to the surface of the sea. Ning Shu stood on the surface of the sea and pointed with his finger. The sea water wrapped around Ning Shu's thunderbolt. The thunderbolt was incomparably sharp and directly split the sea water. However, if you cut the water with a knife, the water would flow even faster. There was no hardness in the water that blocked the roaring thunderbolt. Ning Shu compressed the thin needle and shot it at Zeus. Zeus directly used his shield to block the needle. A stream of water wrapped around Zeus' ankle and then slowly wrapped around Zeus' calf. Zeus looked down at the water and directly shook his leg, wanting to shake off the water. However, the water wrapped around his ankle. Ning Shu pointed with his finger and the water wrapped around Zeus' leg directly turned into ice, freezing Zeus' leg. The water in the sea wrapped around Zeus' body and finally froze Zeus into an ice cube. Ning Shu was panting while being chased by Zeus' thunderbolt. He directly used his peerless martial art and released the star dragon. The star dragon swallowed the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt rampaged through the dragon's body and finally rushed out of the dragon's body. Fuck. Ning Shu cursed in his heart. In this world, she had only mastered the power of thunderbolt. This power was even more violent than the power of the sun. It was not easy to control and was not proficient in it. Moreover, Zeus was the lord of thunderbolt. Sometimes, the power of thunderbolt would not be under her control and control. A mountain could not accommodate 2 tigers. Even if it was a male and a female, it was not possible. The power of thunderbolt could only be controlled by one person. Right now, Ning Shu was the one being beaten. The ice sculpture that had frozen Zeus cracked and finally exploded with a bang. Ice shards flew everywhere and reflected the sunlight. Ning Shu didn't expect to be able to deal with Zeus in this way. He just needed to trap him for a while. Zeus looked at Ning Shu, who was being chased like a dog, and asked, "You still have the power of the ice god? Wasn't freezing the ice god's ability?" The ability to freeze everything within 1,000 miles had the ability to turn water into ice. Ning Shu could only keep using water to block the lightning. However, the lightning was unstoppable. No matter what obstacles were in front of it, it did not retreat. Its sharpness was comparable to the metal-type world origin. Zeus's expression was a little serious. The more time passed, the more he felt that this woman was a real threat. She could control water and melt ice. The appearance of this person was a calamity for the Olympian gods. He couldn't let her live. Otherwise, the divine system would be shaken. Unless this woman also became a god and was given a divine title. But fuck, she killed a god and still had to be given glory. It was too sullen. It was like slapping himself in the face. He couldn't bear it. Kill this bastard. Zeus released another powerful thunderbolt, and the 2 thunderbolts attacked Ning Shu from both sides. Ning Shu was speechless. Relying on the fact that humans couldn't control the power of Thunderbolt at will, Ning Shu pointed his finger and a huge wave hit Zeus. Zeus sneered. How could a wave of this level be a threat to him? Although Zeus's body was hit by the wave, there was no damage. Ning Shu pointed his finger and Zeus's body began to freeze again. Zeus was frozen into an ice sculpture. Ning Shu dodged the thunderbolt while pointing his finger. A large basin of water floated up. Ning Shu raised the temperature of the water to the highest. When the boiling water was poured on the ice sculpture, the exchange and collision of cold and hot would make the blood vessels burst. It was like a frozen glass that would explode when hot water was poured on it. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment and was hit in the back by the thunderbolt. Ning Shu immediately felt a heart-wrenching pain and fell into the sea. Even so, the thunderbolt still followed Ning Shu and swore to kill Ning Shu. Ning Shu was in trouble, and Zeus was in trouble too. Although his body was invincible, when it reached a critical point, he would still be hurt. The exchange of hot and cold made some of the blood vessels on Zeus's exposed skin burst, and golden blood spurted out. Ning Shu flashed and appeared in front of Zeus. He reached out and grabbed Zeus's arm. Ning Shu easily grabbed the flesh on Zeus's arm, revealing the white bone. Zeus gritted his teeth and looked at Ning Shu. How dare you? His body had never been hurt like this before. Ning Shu's back was already badly mutilated. He smiled and said, I've never been hurt like this before either. This is the second time. It was the second time he was badly mutilated like this. Zeus's face was bleeding golden blood. You seem to have the power of the fire god. Only his son, the fire god, could heat water. Ning Shu shook his head. You're overthinking it. It was just that the state of the water was different. Objects had the ability to absorb heat, but how much they could absorb depended on the object itself. Her water was able to heat up because it absorbed the surrounding heat. Ning Shu's face was pale. His back had been struck by lightning, and there were still residual lightning crackling. It was as painful as rubbing salt on the wound and needles in the bone. Ning Shu absorbed the lightning power on his wound and had to dodge the lightning power. He had no choice but to be chased by such a thing. He was really in trouble. A barrier appeared in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu stood in the barrier and hurriedly mobilized his spiritual energy to heal the wound on his back. Zeus's situation wasn't good either. The two sides were facing each other from a distance. Ning Shu felt that she couldn't delay any longer. Otherwise, what if Zeus summoned his companions? She would definitely be surrounded if she was alone. But what should she do? Zeus was the god king. His strength was not to be underestimated. The possibility of killing Zeus was, a little small. But if she ran away now, Zeus would bring an army to suppress her. At that time, she would have to face a sky full of gods. It was equivalent to becoming the enemy of the entire world. It wasn't easy to change fate. Ning Shu's current situation was what she was in. She was in a very difficult situation. Therefore, whether Zeus was alive or dead, she could not let him return to Mount Olympus. As of now, only Athena, Poseidon, and Zeus were involved. The other gods were not involved yet. If Zeus returned, he would probably gather a group of gods to destroy her. Even if she was Superman, she could not deal with so many gods. The gods were not to be trifled with. Chapter 1880. Therefore, Ning Shu decided to keep Zeus here today no matter what. He would do anything to keep Zeus here. And Zeus' disappearance would definitely be beneficial to some. These gods were not a single piece of iron. Everyone had their own selfish motives. Zeus had been betrayed before. Zeus was a god, but because he did not care about the affairs of the mortal world, he was also known as the idle god. The idle god did not do nothing. He had a powerful thunderbolt. When Zeus was angry, there would be thunder in the sky. Together with Athena, Poseidon, and Apollo, Hera tied up Zeus with a rope made of rawhide while he was asleep. They put Zeus' thunderbolt out of Zeus' reach. Zeus was tied up and threatened to execute this group of people, no, this group of gods. They laughed at Zeus and said, "Come if you have the guts." Unfortunately, when deciding who would be the successor of the gods, they had a dispute. Just when everyone was arguing and almost fighting, the goddess of the ocean Thetis came over and interfered. Thanks to the sea goddess, Zeus was unsealed and revived. He tied up Hera, who had led the rebellion, with a golden bracelet and hung her up. The gods saw Hera's miserable state and were angry, but they did not dare to help. Zeus, in order to calm everyone's anger, not only released Hera, but also declared her his legal wife. The condition was that the gods swear to him that they would never rebel. Later, Poseidon and Apollo were punished to go to Troy. Only Athena was not punished, which meant that Zeus knew Athena's strength. And Zeus's feelings for Athena were love. The city walls of Troy were the result of Poseidon and the others' failure to resist Zeus. Being betrayed by his wife, children, and brother meant that Zeus, the god-king, did not have the hearts of the people, no, the gods. Without the thunderbolt, the god-king was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Ning Shu looked at the thunderbolt in Zeus's hand. What if she took the thunderbolt from Zeus and tied him up with a rope? Zeus' weapon, thunder, and Zeus' shield were both made by the Cyclops. It wasn't just Zeus's weapon. Even Poseidon's trident and Hades's helmet of invisibility were made by Cyclopes. How could she snatch the weapon from his hand? As long as Zeus died, the gods would be busy electing a new god-king. Who would have the time to care about her? Ning Shu rushed in front of Zeus, stretched out her hand, and grabbed the thunderbolt in Zeus's hand. As soon as she held the weapon, Ning Shu's hair stood up. Her beautiful face became incomparably distorted. It was too painful. Zeus was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect this rascal to rush up and snatch his things. He must be tired of living. The power of the lightning was getting stronger and stronger. Ning Shu felt as though his body was about to be electrocuted into powder. His opponent must have increased the power output. Ning Shu refused to let go. Her other hand grabbed the wound on Zeus's arm. Zeus's arm trembled reflexively. Ning Shu pulled the thunderbolt with all her strength. In the end, Zeus kicked it away. Ning Shu rolled a few times in the air and fell into the sea with a splash. Ning Shu was speechless. Zeus gloomily looked at Ning Shu. He raised the thunderbolt and released it towards Ning Shu. At the same time, he put away his own thunderbolt. Seeing that Ning Shu wanted to snatch his things, Zeus hurriedly put them away. Ning Shu hurriedly protected herself with a barrier. Previously, she was badly mutilated. Now, she ran to snatch Zeus's weapon. Her body was on the verge of collapse. She was made of flesh and blood. It was very painful, okay? Every time she did a mission, it would hurt a few times. Fight with your life. As the mission progressed, Ning Shu found that the client's status was getting lower and lower. Their strength was also getting weaker. It would take a lot of effort to counterattack. The difficulty increased by a lot. Ning Shu was speechless when he saw Zeus hide his weapon. If you have the ability, use your weapon. Since you don't want to use a weapon, let's fight with our fists. Let's see who can beat who. Ning Shu opened her hand and a huge hammer appeared in her hand. Ning Shu held the hammer with both hands and raised it high to smash at Zeus. Zeus used his shield to block Ning Shu's hammer. The two weapons collided, creating a huge impact. Ning Shu was sent flying by the impact. Of course, Zeus didn't have it easy either. Ning Shu swung the hammer at Zeus again. Zeus was speechless. He could only take Ning Shu's attack head-on. He found that this weak human girl was surprisingly strong. If it weren't for the fact that Zeus' shield was sturdy enough, it would have been shattered by her strength. Zeus found that only the power of lightning was effective against this girl. He couldn't win in terms of pure physical strength. This woman's strength was too shocking. Zeus took out his lightning. As soon as he did, Ning Shu's eyes turned green. She reached out and grabbed Zeus' lightning. Zeus, what was wrong with her? She wanted his weapon. Ning Shu endured the pain and grabbed Zeus' lightning. Neither of them let go. In the end, Ning Shu looked behind Zeus in horror. Athena? Zeus suddenly heard Athena's name and hurriedly turned around. Freeze! Ning Shu threw an immobilizing talisman at Zeus, immobilizing him. Ning Shu pulled hard and snatched the thunderbolt from Zeus's hand. Ning Shu then used an enchantment to seal the weapon. Zeus broke free from the immobilizing talisman and glowered at Ning Shu. You lied to me. All's fair in war. And I really did see Athena. Ning Shu smiled. They were already enemies. There was no need to talk about lying. Without his weapon, Zeus was like a crippled arm. His combat strength was greatly reduced. Ning Shu shook his numb arm. This was too fucking painful. Ning Shu waved her hand, and the seawater converged into a barrier, wrapping Zeus inside. Zeus was trapped in a bubble-like barrier. He struggled with all his might, but he couldn't break free. Furthermore, the barrier was filled with water. Zeus floated in the water and couldn't step on solid ground. Zeus' face turned green. Ning Shu roared, but when he opened his mouth, water would gush into his mouth. It was impossible to hear what he was saying. Ning Shu sat on the water and rested for a while. He felt that his body couldn't take it anymore. After cultivating the peerless martial arts, his physique had improved. However, after being attacked by lightning again and again, Ning Shu's blood was almost depleted. Come down. Ning Shu raised his head and shouted at the little bird that had been circling in the sky. This little bird wasn't just a little bit timid. When it saw a fight, it immediately flew into the sky. It was scared out of its wits. How useless. It didn't have any awareness of being a powerful creature. Chapter 1881. Did it still think of itself as a little bird? Whenever it encountered something, the first thing it thought of was to fly away. If Ning Shu wasn't here, it would have flown far away long ago. It didn't have a clear understanding of its own strength. Its intelligence was a shortcoming. When the firebird heard Ning Shu's voice, it quickly flew down and turned into a small ruby bird. It perched on Ning Shu's shoulder. Ning Shu was speechless. You've become bigger. Carry me. Ning Shu said unhappily. The little bird tilted its head and looked at Ning Shu with a cute and understanding look. It looked very cute. Ning Shu wanted to slap it away. Ning Shu invaded the little bird's consciousness with his consciousness and told it his intentions. The little bird barely understood Ning Shu's intentions. It spread its wings and flew into the air, turning into a huge firebird. Ning Shu pointed his finger and a circular barrier filled with water floated onto the bird's back. Ning Shu sat cross-legged on the bird's back and carefully sensed the sunken ship in the sea. Then, a box of gems and gold coins flew up. Ning Shu looked at the box of gems and gold coins. It should be enough for her to live. There were many treasures in the sea. Ning Shu closed his eyes and began to cultivate to repair his damaged body. He couldn't avoid getting injured every time. His body was really pitiful. It hurt so much. However, there was a reward for the effort. At least now, Zeus was sealed by her barrier. In the barrier, Zeus couldn't even speak. Seeing Zeus so young and helpless, Ning Shu felt that his body didn't hurt as much. The most important thing now was to find a place to stay and then slowly deal with Zeus. It would be best if Zeus disappeared and the gods of Mount Olympus were busy electing a new god king. Then, Zeus, the god king, would become a thing of the past. Hee hee. Zeus floated in the barrier and saw Ning Shu staring at him with an undisguised and malicious gaze. He suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. What would this woman do to him? In the barrier, Zeus felt powerless. They couldn't even breathe. Gods had strong bodies. If they were ordinary people, they would have drowned. Ning Shu withdrew his gaze, mobilized the spiritual energy in his dantian, and began to repair his badly mutilated back. Birds fly without direction, as long as they don't fly towards Mount Olympus. The world was vast, and one could settle down anywhere. Ning Shu couldn't take it anymore. His body was too tired, so he laid down on the bird's back to rest. Sleeping was the best way to recover his body. After an unknown period of time, Ning Shu heard the chirping of a bird. He opened his eyes and looked down. He saw a lone island below. Ning Shu patted the bird's back. Go down. The firebird flapped its wings and flew towards the island. Ning Shu turned his head and looked at Zeus, who was inside the barrier. Zeus' body was floating in the water with his eyes closed. He seemed to be dead. Your uncle didn't believe that Zeus was dead. When he heard Athena like that, her heart was still beating. As long as there was a godhead, Zeus would be fine. He was probably trying to numb her so that she wouldn't fall for it. Moreover, it was better that Zeus was dead, so she wouldn't have to do anything. The firebird landed on the beach of the island. Ning Shu jumped onto the beach. He felt that this island was a little familiar. Could it be the island where Medusa had turned into an ugly monster? When the time came, would there be heroes coming to find her and cut off her head? TSK, after going around in circles, he still ended up here. Since he was here, he might as well stay here. It seemed that she was really fated to be on this island. This island felt like a primitive rainforest. He didn't know what kind of creatures lived on this island. Ning Shu looked at Zeus, who was inside the barrier. He reached out and touched the barrier. The water in the barrier immediately stirred up. Zeus' body spun uncontrollably inside, like he was in a washing machine. Zeus opened his eyes and looked at Ning Shu. His hair fluttered, and bubbles came out of his mouth. At least let him speak. Was this woman going to keep him locked up? What if he couldn't get out? Without lightning, he couldn't break this damn thing. Ning Shu reduced the water in the barrier, allowing Zeus to reveal his head. What are you doing? Zeus roared at Ning Shu. I'm going to keep you inside because I don't dare to let you out. Ning Shu smiled like a flower. The sea breeze blew his hair. What a beautiful woman. Zeus was speechless. The gods won't let you go. Zeus gritted his teeth. He was now a prisoner in a water prison. He had punished Prometheus, but he never thought that one day he would be imprisoned by a human woman. What do you want? Zeus had no choice but to deal with Ning Shu patiently. If this matter spread out, how could he manage the gods? How could he intimidate them? Zeus couldn't lose his face. And his weapon seemed to have been stolen. Fuck. What a vicious woman. Normally, goddesses and human women wouldn't dare disobey him because of his power and status. But in front of this woman, none of that seemed to work. He just couldn't think of anything that could satisfy this woman. Let me go first. My weapon, lightning, is in your hands anyway. I can't beat you, but I won't run away. Let's live on this island, Zeus said. Ning Shu blinked, feeling that this development and style were a little strange. Ning Shu was a little surprised and asked, "You want to live with me on this isolated island in the sea?" Yes. Like a married couple. Ning Shu raised an eyebrow. Zeus nodded. If you want to live like this, I want to too. I'm tired of living in the Olympic forest. A bunch of people are coveting my position as the God King. It's tiring. If we can live on this deserted island together, it's not bad, Zeus said. He looked at Ning Shu with his slightly golden eyes. It seemed like something was about to spill out of them. Ning Shu, Zeus must be playing with her. They were fighting to the death before. It was as if they were going to eat each other alive. Now, they were going to live like a married couple on this isolated island. The situation changed too quickly. It was like a tornado. Zeus didn't think that this was a romantic encounter. He had to calm her down for now. He could still be a married couple with a beauty. Once he was free, Zeus would definitely come back. Ning Shu, do you think you're some kind of sweet cake that everyone loves? Do you think you can do whatever you want now? Is your brain damaged? Ning Shu looked at Zeus in surprise. Giving herself to her enemy, only someone with a mental illness would do such a thing. Then, she would wait for Zeus to come back with his people. Then, she would painfully ask Zeus why he was doing this to her. Ning Shu quickly shook his head to get rid of the melodramatic plot in his head. Chapter 1882. Ning Shu felt that Zeus was trying to trick her. Dream on. Ning Shu smiled at Zeus. You're the deity king. How can I let you live such a hard life with me? Moreover, on an isolated island, there's no one, no people to worship, and no gods to submit to. It's too hard on you. Zeus said, the deity king has his own difficulties. I'm willing. Let me go first. Ning Shu reached out and flicked the barrier. The water in the barrier suddenly surged. Zeus' body couldn't help but flip over. It was like he was in a washing machine. It was so dizzy that he almost vomited. Zeus was speechless. Ning Shu pressed his hand on the barrier. The barrier immediately quieted down. Zeus spat out the water in his mouth and looked at Ning Shu. What do you mean? I agree to live with you. Ning Shu put his hands behind his back and smiled like a flower. Under the sea breeze, his hair fluttered. He really looked like a beautiful girl. Zeus looked at his face and was momentarily dazed. However, he recovered. If you agree, why won't you let me go? Let's live like this. I'll have to trouble you to stay in there. I'll have to look at your handsome face every day. Ning Shu's face was small. Zeus' face twitched. He was instantly annoyed. You're playing with me. Ning Shu waved his hand. Don't worry. As long as I have a bite to eat, you'll have a bite to eat. Zeus was speechless. Ning Shu found a wide leaf and laid it on the beach. Then, he lay down on the sofa and started to rest. The bird's wings had grown, and it couldn't block the sun for Ning Shu. However, its wings were full of flames. When it got close, it burned Ning Shu's hair. Ning Shu was speechless. Go play somewhere else, Ning Shu said indifferently. Ning Shu closed his eyes to sleep. Beside him, Zeus silently looked at Ning Shu. What the hell was this? He was Zeus, and now he was imprisoned. If this news were to spread, where would he put his face? This was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was whether he would be killed by this woman. He had killed Athena and Poseidon without any hesitation. It was obvious that he was a ruthless person. Zeus could only hope that his identity as the God King would cause the other party to fear him and not dare to make a move. After Ning Shu woke up, he stretched his body and took out the goat skin. He took out a brush and ink and began to draw talismans. Invisibility talismans, body-securing talismans, and all kinds of talismans. There were also charms that could resist the calamity. She had the halo of faith, but Medusa didn't. Try cursing me, Ning Shu said to Zeus. Zeus ignored Ning Shu. He was vigilant. No one would allow others to curse them. Crazy. Zeus ignored her, so Ning Shu stirred up the water in the enchantment barrier. The enchantment barrier was not big, only big enough for Zeus to stand. Zeus was caught off guard and drank a mouthful of water, causing him to choke to death. Zeus's expression was ugly. "Kill me if you can. Are you cursing me?" Ning Shu said to Zeus. "Crazy." Zeus cursed in his heart. Seeing Ning Shu looking at him covetously, he could only curse casually. He muttered to himself, wanting to turn Ning Shu into a little white rabbit. The only way to break the curse was to let him go. Ning Shu, a cloud of cursed black smoke flew towards Ning Shu. Ning Shu held the talisman between his fingers. "Go." The talisman flew towards the black smoke. The black smoke surrounded the talisman. The talisman slowly turned black and lost its effect. The black smoke was almost absorbed by the talisman. Ning Shu scratched his head. It seemed that the power of the talisman still needed to be strengthened. This was just an ordinary god's punishment curse. If it were a more terrifying curse, the talisman would definitely not be able to withstand it. It seemed that it needed to be improved. Since the curse was based on power, there would be a limit to the power. Ning Shu kept drawing with a magic pen. Zeus, who was in the barrier, was speechless. This girl actually blocked the curse. Ning Shu finished drawing the talisman and wanted to see if it would work. He said to Zeus, "Curse me again." Zeus closed his eyes and did not want to look at her. Curses could be cursed, but there was a price to pay for God's punishment. He was trapped here, and every bit of power he used was a little bit less. "Don't go too far." Zeus looked coldly at Ning Shu. He had the noble temperament of a god king. Even if he was a prisoner, Zeus was still a proud god king. Ning Shu did not care about Zeus's gaze at all. He said, "Curse me again. Maybe cursing me will make you feel better." Cursing could vent the anger in one's heart. Moreover, this kind of curse could come true. It was awesome. Zeus, this woman was crazy. But Zeus was very smart. He obviously felt that he was a lab rat. The other party was testing the power of the talisman, and it was obvious that it could withstand the power of God's punishment. This was not a good thing. If every human had a talisman like this in their hands, the divine punishment would no longer be a threat or deterrent to humans. Zeus stared at Ning Shu. "Who the hell are you?" Ning Shu said, "I told you to curse me. What are you doing? Hurry up and curse me." Zeus, crazy. Zeus ignored Ning Shu. What kind of god king was he? He wasn't someone who could do whatever she wanted. Ning Shu looked at Zeus's stubborn expression. He tapped his finger, and the water in the enchantment slowly froze. This was especially true for water that had been compressed. Zeus felt his body go numb. The coldness was like needles stabbing into his muscles. Even though he had a divine body, he still felt extremely cold. Zeus breathed out white mist. His face was blue from the cold, and his nose was red. Zeus's teeth chattered. "Don't go too far. If you go too far, there will be no way to clean up this mess." Ning Shu shrugged nonchalantly. "Even if I don't go too far, would you let me go if I let you go now?" Zeus fell silent. His pride did not allow him to let this woman go. She did not care about his status and power. Didn't she want anything? He didn't care about status, but he also had strength. If he didn't have any desires, he wouldn't be able to find anything to exchange for it. "You're cursing me." Ning Shu put his hands on his waist and said to Zeus. Zeus had no choice but to curse Ning Shu. This time, he cursed Ning Shu to die alone and become an ugly old woman. The black smoke of the curse floated towards Ning Shu, and the black smoke was very thick. It seemed that Zeus was angry this time, and he had to pay a lot. It could be seen from the black smoke of the curse. Ning Shu threw the talisman at the black smoke. The talisman paper shone with a golden light, and the black smoke slowly dissipated under the golden light. However, in the end, the talisman paper turned into black paper. Chapter 1883. Ning Shu was not very satisfied with the effect of blocking the curse. If it had been a more vicious curse, the charm would not have been able to block it. Ning Shu felt a little helpless, and Zeus was even more speechless. His previous god's punishment was very serious, and Ning Shu was cursed to become a loner, but Ning Shu had blocked it. What on earth was this? He was not familiar with this kind of power, and had never seen it before. Ning Shu improved the charm again. With the combination of the charm and the array, the power of the curse would be greatly reduced. To put it bluntly, the purpose of the charm was to take the place of the cursed person to bear the curse. Ning Shu mobilized the spiritual energy in his dantian and then began to draw a charm. This was Ning Shu's new charm. Ning Shu had tried it many times but had not succeeded. Ning Shu put down the magic pen and moved his wrist. Next to him was the fruit that the firebird had picked on the island. The fruit was red and looked very delicious. Ning Shu took a bite of the fruit. Seeing Zeus staring at him, he asked, "Do you want to eat it?" Zeus did not speak. His golden hair was draped over his face, and he looked like a handsome man who had just come out of the shower. His long eyelashes were wet, which made them even more obvious. His eyes were moist. Needless to say, Zeus's appearance was good. Otherwise, he would not have given birth to the handsome Apollo, the beautiful Athena, and all kinds of beautiful goddesses. Good genes were the foundation. Seeing that Zeus was not speaking, Ning Shu ate his own fruit and then drew a charm. However, the charm almost drained Ning Shu's spiritual energy. After drawing the charm, Ning Shu's face was extremely pale, and then he sat cross-legged to cultivate. When he felt better, he asked Zeus to curse him. After all, he had to find a way to put an end to the gods' curses once and for all. After cultivating, Ning Shu said to Zeus, "Curse me. Make it big." Zeus was speechless. Zeus was furious. What was this? What did he think he was? How could he curse him just because he wanted to? No one had ever taken the initiative to ask for divine punishment, and he had to pay for it. Zeus stared at her. "Do you really want me to curse you?" "Of course." Ning Shu nodded. "Come on, make yourself at home. In the name of the God King, I summon the King of Hades from the abyss of hell. He shall trample on death and take away the human who has offended the majesty of God." Zeus fixed his gaze on Ning Shu, his mouth spitting out an ancient chant. Ning Shu almost jumped up. Shit, not good, Zeus is going to summon Hades. Now that Hades was here, he would not be easy to deal with. Zeus stared fixedly at Ning Shu with a trace of contempt in the corner of his mouth, as if he was looking at Ning Shu as a joke. As Zeus finished his last word, the entire sky turned dark. A distorted hole appeared in the sky, and a hand stretched out. He could not let Hades escape. With a tap of his finger, he set up a barrier around the black hole in the sky. Then, the water in the ocean rushed into the black hole. The black hole swallowed the water. At the same time, Ning Shu kept chanting the rebirth scripture in his heart. Since it was a creature of hell, the rebirth scripture should be useful. Ning Shu kept strengthening the barrier and the young gathering array. Creatures of hell were all dark-type creatures and were afraid of light. They gathered the surrounding yang energy to make Hades uncomfortable, so it would be best if he could return to the underworld. "Hades, brother, come out quickly," Zeus saw the situation and immediately shouted. Fuck, what was the situation now? The seawater kept pouring into the black hole. Hades had 1 foot out, but it was blocked by the barrier. Moreover, the water was pouring into his underworld through the underworld passage. If this continued, the underworld could not be flooded. Moreover, this was the water of the human world, which was different from that of hell. Hades had no choice but to close the black hole and disappear. Hades left without even showing his face. Ning Shu did not see what Hades looked like. He only saw 1 hand and 1 foot. However, Ning Shu was relieved that Hades did not appear. The black hole in the sky disappeared, and the sky returned to its clear state. The little firebird hiding in Ning Shu's chest carefully poked its head out and looked around. Ning Shu directly took it out and threw it away. What the hell was this? It was fine if it was timid and hid, but it also hid in his chest. Scram! Zeus silently watched his brother disappear. At least come out and take a look at him. He could send a message to the god of Mount Olympus and ask someone to save him. Ning Shu wiped the cold sweat on his head. He had almost been exposed. Perhaps he had already been exposed. It seemed that the situation was not good. Ning Shu stared at Zeus. Zeus coldly said, "You asked me to curse you." Ning Shu had miscalculated. He did not expect Zeus to summon Hades. This was beyond Ning Shu's expectations. Moreover, Ning Shu lacked understanding of God's strength. After all, Medusa was just an ordinary and humble priestess. God was omnipotent. She did not question the gods. Medusa used to think that way. Now, he had to get rid of Zeus. Otherwise, something else would happen. Ning Shu wanted to secretly get rid of Zeus. Then, the gods would know that Zeus was dead and would elect a new god king. But now that Hades had appeared, even if it was out of brotherhood, Hades would definitely inform the gods of Mount Olympus. Ning Shu opened his hand. The weapon, Thunderbolt, which was wrapped in the enchantment, flew into Ning Shu's hand. Even though it was wrapped in the enchantment, Thunderbolt still flashed with powerful thunder power. The most important thing now was to destroy the weapon. Without a weapon, the God King would not be a threat. And without a weapon, Zeus would not be able to suppress the gods below. They would all jump out and rebel against him. Ning Shu covered the thunderbolt with frost and froze it. This frost could be considered 1,000-year-old ice. Ning Shu kept compressing the seawater and then froze it. After freezing it for a while, Ning Shu placed Thunderbolt in boiling water. He used the power of the stars to create a giant hammer. He held the hammer and smashed the hot and cold Thunderbolt. Normally, when the hot and cold alternated, the object would become brittle and easier to destroy. Thunderbolt was a weapon made by the Cyclops. If it was a weapon, it could be destroyed. Ning Shu held a huge hammer and smashed the thunderbolts again and again at high speed. Ning Shu's huge power smashed into the ground, causing the entire island to shake. Thunderbolt flashed with thunder power, but it was fine. It really was the God King's weapon. Ning Shu exclaimed. His fingers moved quickly and set up a yang gathering array. He gathered the yang qi of the world. The sun was shining in the sky. It was very hot. The sand on the beach was so hot that it could burn your feet. After setting up the yang gathering array, the heat surged into the array and ignited the power of the sun. It burned Thunderbolt. If it was frozen, it would be scalded with hot water. Now that it was roasted with fire, it would be hammered again. Chapter 1884. Zeus was dumbfounded as he watched Ning Shu play with his weapon. What was he trying to do? What kind of hatred did this woman have for his thunder? Why are you doing this? Zeus asked Ning Shu. He really couldn't figure out why she had to risk offending all the gods in the world. If you want me to let you go, it's not impossible, Zeus said. Ning Shu squatted next to the sun-gathering array. His hair was burning from the heat. He turned to look at Zeus and grinned, revealing his white teeth. Can you really let me go? Zeus swallowed a mouthful of saliva and nodded. Okay. What should I do? I don't believe in gods. Ning Shu turned and stared at the thunder in the array. The thunder was still strong under the heat of the sun. Ning Shu removed the sun-gathering array and reached out to hold the thunder. The thunder flickered with the power of thunder and crackled. Ning Shu's body was numb from the electricity. Ning Shu used his peerless martial arts to absorb the power of thunder from the weapon. The violent thunder rushed into Ning Shu's body, as if it wanted to destroy Ning Shu's body. After all, it wasn't his power. It was so difficult to tame. Ning Shu endured the heart-wrenching pain and absorbed the power of thunder. Without the protection of the thunder, let's see what you can do. After absorbing the power of the thunderbolt, Ning Shu repeatedly froze it, heated it with hot water, and smashed it with her hammer. Finally, with a bang, the thunderbolt weapon finally broke into pieces under Ning Shu's torment. The violent thunder in Ning Shu's body had now calmed down, quietly occupying a corner of his dantian. Ning Shu shook her numb arm. Every time she smashed it with force, the huge recoil shook her arms so much that her bones were about to break. Zeus looked at Ning Shu in a daze. Damn, his weapon. Ning Shu let out a long breath and wiped the sweat on his head. It was finally destroyed. Now the threat of Zeus could be eliminated. Zeus's expression was extremely unsightly. Lightning and Zeus's shield were used to intimidate the gods. Lightning was the most powerful one, while Zeus's shield was used for defense. It didn't have powerful attacks. Was he going to rely on Zeus' shield to defend himself and not fight back? Zeus's face was ashen, and he looked extremely haggard. Zeus understood that his situation wasn't good. Even if the gods brought him back, without enough power, he would still be pulled down from his position as the God King. Before Ning Shu could even catch his breath, the sky started to fill with dark clouds, and the wind started to blow. One after another, gods appeared in the sky above the island. There were both men and women. Ning Shu had been thinking about this scene for a long time, but now it had appeared. The divine might released by the densely packed gods was about to sink the island. The scene in Ning Shu's imagination appeared. There was only one feeling in Ning Shu's heart. It was finally here. Countless melons on a vine. Ning Shu immediately broke through Zeus's barrier and said excitedly, "Look, they're here to pick you up. You can go back to the divine mountain. Remember to take me with you." Zeus was speechless. Motherfucker. Zeus couldn't feel happy in the face of a sky full of gods. If lightning hadn't been destroyed by this crazy woman, he would be happy that these people had come to save him. But now, he didn't have the power to intimidate the gods. There was no difference whether he saved them or not. Zeus felt very awkward, very awkward. God King. Everyone bowed to Zeus. Zeus's wife, Hera, stood at the front. She was also Zeus's sister. She asked, "God King, I heard from Pluto that something happened to you. What happened?" Ning Shu immediately jumped out and said, "Athena and Poseidon rebelled and were killed by the God King. Now, the God King is injured." Hera squinted at Ning Shu. "Who are you?" It seemed to be a human. Hera's expression was cold. Could it be another of Zeus's women? Ning Shu smiled and said, "I'm Athena's priest." "Oh, Medusa." Even the gods knew how beautiful Medusa was. Ning Shu looked honored. "It's me." Athena and Poseidon attacked together. The God King's lightning was destroyed. Lightning was destroyed. Ning Shu's words made the gods' expressions turn strange. Even the atmosphere became strange. Hera's aura became much sharper. She asked Zeus, "Is it true? Even lightning was destroyed?" Zeus wanted to strangle Ning Shu. This woman was talking nonsense. She had exposed his weakness. Zeus didn't speak. Ning Shu said, "You can't imagine how dangerous the situation was." The gongs and drums. Gongs and drums filled the sky, and firecrackers went off. The situation was very dangerous. Ning Shu moved closer to Zeus. He seemed to be afraid of Hera. Hera suddenly smiled, looking incomparably beautiful. "It's fine as long as the God King is fine." Zeus frowned, looking very melancholy. Ning Shu looked vain. He asked Zeus, "Can I go to the divine mountain?" I've never been there before. Will you take me with you, God King? Scram. Zeus said. Zeus said to the gods, now, kill this woman for me. Ning Shu immediately howled, Divine King, how can you do this to me? You're burning the bridge after crossing the river. I saved you, how can you do this to me? You even said that you admired my beauty, but you're being oppressed by the tigress at home. Ning Shu spouted nonsense. He glanced at Hera, who had a fierce expression. Hera's eyebrows were raised. Ning Shu realized he had said something wrong and immediately covered his mouth. This woman killed Athena and Poseidon. Kill her now. Sun God, kill her. Zeus was so anxious that he was about to cry. This woman was sinister, cunning, and shameless beyond his imagination. Fuck you, why are you acting like you love him now? That means she's still afraid of the gods. Ning Shu wailed and kicked her legs on the ground. King of gods, I betrayed Athena to save you. You can't do this to me. Hera looked at the superficial and vain Ning Shu and couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She wanted to get close to the king of gods. Zeus was a lecher who only wanted to have sex with her. He wouldn't take responsibility for her. Unless she was a goddess, at least a goddess could claim the title of lover. Alright, stop howling. You're a human woman. You can't go to the divine mountain. Since you saved the god king, I won't punish you, Hera said coldly. Ning Shu's face was full of unwillingness. She asked Hera, can you give me some benefits? I risked my life to save the divine king. He's the divine king. Can you give me some benefits, like eternal youth? Hera. Chapter 1885. Such a shallow woman. Hera had been very angry when she heard that she was a tigress. However, such a shallow woman wasn't enough to take her seriously. Moreover, she was a human. Did she think that she could turn things around just because she had the divine king? Idiot. Hera had dealt with countless women like this. No reward, Hera said. Ning Shu was annoyed. I saved the god king. Was the god king so worthless? Zeus was speechless. Damn it, without the lightning, without the power to intimidate the gods, none of them would listen to him. Moreover, Hera was the empress and had great authority. Even the gods were afraid of her. At this time, many of them listened to Hera. God King, let's go back to the divine mountain, Hera said to her younger brother/husband. Zeus was in a dilemma. Whether they went back or not, it was a trap. Should they run now? Where could they run? Earlier, Hera, Athena, Apollo, and Poseidon had tied him up and taken away the lightning. Now that he didn't have the lightning, he had to face that situation again. Damn it! Zeus pulled Ning Shu. We can go back, but you have to take this woman with you. Ning Shu's eyes immediately lit up. Are you really going to take me to the sacred mountain? I heard that there are many gods in the sacred mountain, and there are many divine fruits. Eating a divine fruit can make you immortal and stay young forever. Is that true? Ning Shu looked terrible. I'm willing to go with you. Zeus was speechless. Damn woman. Hera's expression turned ugly. She said to Zeus, the divine mountain is not a place where a human can go. God King, you can't take a human there. Moreover, the divine mountain is very dangerous. She's a human. Wouldn't you be harming her? Zeus rubbed his brows. He was very anxious. Sister, this woman killed Poseidon and Athena. You can't underestimate her. Ning Shu was confused. He didn't know why Zeus said that. I didn't. How could I defeat Athena and Poseidon? Oh, I know. You're going to take me to Mount Sumeru in this way, right? Ning Shu punched Zeus' chest. I'll listen to you. Zeus's sternum was almost caved in by Ning Shu's enormous strength. This woman was simply crazy. There must be something wrong with her brain. God King, let's go back, Hera said impatiently. Zeus did not move. If the woman escaped this time, she would be even more difficult to deal with in the future. She would definitely find a way to deal with God in the future. Plus, Zeus had been used as a lab rat. The woman was getting stronger and stronger, but God was oblivious. This was a very dangerous situation. His sister, Hera, had always been jealous. Now, she probably thought that he had taken a fancy to this woman and insisted on bringing her to the divine mountain. Zeus could only curse in his heart. He might not be able to keep his position as the divine king, and this woman was a threat to the gods, but he couldn't say anything. Zeus pointed his finger, and the scene of Ning Shu fighting Athena and Poseidon appeared in the air. Ning Shu narrowed her eyes and looked at Zeus with a tolerant smile. Yes, I killed Poseidon and Athena. You're right. Take me to Mount Sumeru, please. Zeus was speechless. Hera had had enough of this farce. She didn't care about a human woman, but now that Zeus had lost his thunder, it was easy to deal with him. The scene of her being hung upside down was still vivid in her mind. Without Athena and Poseidon, she would have one less competitor. It couldn't be better. As for how Athena and Poseidon died, she didn't care. Now, Zeus should give up his position as the divine king. Hera flew in front of Zeus and reached out to hold his arm. Brother, let's go back to Mount Sumeru. Ning Shu looked at Hera and Zeus, who were holding each other's arms, with an aggrieved expression. He was full of resentment as a single dog. Zeus wanted to break free from his sister's arm, but Hera held on tightly. Zeus said in a low voice, "Everything I said is true." Hera turned to Ning Shu, who was full of resentment. "Do you want to go to Mount Sumeru?" she asked coldly. "Can I go?" Ning Shu's eyes shone with greed. "No, you can't. Humans can't go to Mount Sumeru. There are all kinds of monsters there that will swallow you whole. There are all kinds of dangers." Hera looked at Ning Shu. "You can go if you want." Ning Shu's face turned green. He hurriedly waved his hand. I'm not going." Ning Shu retreated and ran into the dense forest. The queen's crown on Hera's head reflected a dazzling light. Zeus' eyes hurt when he saw the light. Hera, who had always been noble and cold, smiled gently at Zeus. "Brother, let's go back." Hera pulled Zeus onto the chariot. "Let's go back," she said majestically to the gods. The gods followed behind Hera. Ning Shu looked up and saw the gods leave through the gaps in the forest. Ning Shu let out an imperceptible sigh of relief. "Hey!" A man's voice came from above. This voice was full of masculinity. Ning Shu looked up and saw Apollo standing on the chariot with his slightly curly hair. Apollo's face was exquisite and handsome. To describe a person, it was best to say that he was angular and handsome, like the ancient Greek sun god Apollo. What did Apollo want? It was time for the throne to change. As Zeus's son, Apollo had a chance to become the next god. Of course, Hera also had her own son. Ning Shu looked at Apollo's face. "You're even more handsome than the god." Apollo frowned. "What a shallow woman." Ning Shu looked at Apollo expectantly. "Did the god send you to take me to Mount Sumeru? But Mount Sumeru is so dangerous. The god must have sent you to protect me." Apollo was speechless. How could this human woman be so shameless? He was a bit puzzled. To be safe, he stayed behind to take a look. In the end, she was such a shallow woman. Although she was beautiful, it was only on the surface. Extremely gaudy. His father was really a hungry man who couldn't be choosy. It was a mistake for him to stay. Apollo was about to leave when Ning Shu called out to him. "Take me away from here. How can I live on this island alone? It's so far away. I can't swim back." Apollo's mouth twitched. This woman thought too highly of herself. Leaving such a powerless woman on this island was the best punishment for her. Without food, she would be in great danger. She might even die on this island. Apollo drove the chariot away, ignoring Ning Shu's heart-wrenching cries. In a flash, he disappeared. Ning Shu put down her waving hand and found a mossy rock to sit on. With a tap of her finger, water appeared in front of her. Ning Shu swallowed the water to moisten her throat. It was as tiring as a fight. The firebird emerged from Ning Shu's chest. Ning Shu was speechless. Chapter 1886. Ning Shu had mixed feelings about the bird. He pinched it and made it shit out of itself. Ning Shu felt that he was bullying a retard, but he didn't want to argue with it. Ning Shu grabbed Firebird and threw it into the sea. Firebird was so scared that it cried. It quickly flew up and landed on Ning Shu's shoulder. Ning Shu facepalmed. What a retard. Ning Shu let out a long breath. He managed to escape this time because he took advantage of the situation. The gods wouldn't care about a puny human. Who would care about an ant that would delay their business, especially when it came to the replacement of the God King? Now that Zeus had lost his power, he definitely couldn't be the God King. As for who would be the God King, it would probably cause a ruckus for a while. This would give her enough time to do whatever she wanted. Even if the God King was elected to deal with her, she would definitely be stronger than she was now. She was just a puny human. How could she have the power to kill Athena and Poseidon? It was impossible for her to destroy Zeus's weapon. If there was a new God King, Ning Shu hoped that Hera would become the God King. The culture of a society was related to the person in power. If a woman became the God King, then the status of women would increase. Medusa was beheaded, which marked the decline of women's rights. Originally, Gaia was born from chaos. At that time, women's status was still very high, but it eventually developed into a patriarchal society. The result of this development was that when female politicians in the West were running for election, Medusa's head was cut off by Perseus. He carried the head and used it to attack women. In a patriarchal society, women who were imprisoned for thousands of years became the embodiment of demons. Even if they had personalities, they were labeled with negative things. For example, Hera was jealous, Medea was cruel, Zeus was dead, and Pandora was given disaster. Men could have all kinds of personalities. A woman's beauty didn't belong to her, and her viciousness was forced. She was not above anyone, even if she was a woman. She was gentle and lovely, and would not be manipulated by men. She had her own aesthetic experience and personality. She was an independent creature that was different from men. Ning Shu hoped that Hera would become the divine king. Hera had a lot of prestige among the gods, so it would be best if she was treated like a fart. Ning Shu ate 2 fruits and drank some water before returning to the beach. Looking at the chest of gold coins and gems, he patted the chest. He could now travel the world. At the same time, he would also pay attention to which god had become the God King. Before the deity king was elected, she would be safe. Even if Zeus had told him the truth, he still had to find her. Grow bigger and get ready to leave this place, Ning Shu said to the Firebird. Firebird tilted her head and looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. Oh, fuck. His IQ was his weakness. Fortunately, Ning Shu persuaded the Firebird to understand. It seemed that refining the wisdom pill was imminent. It was so tiring to communicate with a companion that he couldn't communicate with every day. Ning Shu carried the chest and jumped onto the Firebird's back. Then, he took out a pen and wrote down the cultivation method of the peerless martial arts. He also wrote down all kinds of charms. Most importantly, he wrote down charms that could resist curses. The layers of sheepskin were filled with charms and cultivation methods. The sheepskin could be preserved for a long time, and the ink was magical. After all, it wouldn't fall off. This thing could be preserved for a long time. When he was almost done, Ning Shu lay on the back and slept. It was so relaxing. While sleeping, he let his body circulate the peerless martial arts and absorb spiritual energy. The firebird flew freely. It didn't matter where it flew, as long as it could land. When Ning Shu woke up, the firebird was still flying. It was already very tired from flapping its wings. As it flew, it descended, then flapped its wings and flew up again. As it flew, it descended again, then flapped its wings and flew up again. Ning Shu was speechless. I was wondering why it was still flying on the sea. It turned out that it was moving up and down. It didn't fly much at all. Ning Shu saw that the little firebird was indeed tired. Then, he released the spirit dragon. The firebird became smaller and flew to Ning Shu's shoulder. It squatted down. It was so tired. Ning Shu continued to write charms. Even if those gods came to find trouble, he would have enough power to protect himself. When he was free, he would swallow all kinds of energy and constantly compress the thin needles. The thin needles were a great killing weapon. They also had tyrannical power. Most importantly, they were small enough and could be used for sneak attacks. Now, he could condense them skillfully. Ning Shu pursued quantity. Thinking about it, the sky was densely packed with thin needles. Even if he faced the gods, he wouldn't be afraid. The premise was that he could control such a large number of thin needles. They wouldn't explode before hitting the target. Ning Shu gradually increased the number. From 5 to 8, and then to 10. It was a little difficult to compress the 4 kinds of energy and control so many needles. If he didn't pay attention, Ning Shu would explode himself. He had to run very fast. After flying on the sea for a few days, he finally saw land. Ning Shu didn't know where this place was. In any case, he could go anywhere. It would be best if he could find the world source energy. He was still 3 types of world source energy. It would be good to find one in this world. Even if it was a duplicate, he could sell it. Ning Shu stepped on the ground and felt a sense of steadiness. This was a small fishing village. This fishing village was very poor. But now, social development was slow. Everywhere was desolate. It was a gift from the heavens to be able to fill his stomach. Ning Shu found lodging. In the end, he stayed in a family with only a grandmother and her granddaughter. The old lady was very old. Her hair was already white. Her granddaughter was 14 years old. She was managing a fishing net made of hemp rope. The family was very poor. But in any case, they treated Ning Shu to fish soup. Ning Shu drank the tasteless fish soup. He felt that it was very good. He didn't even have fish soup to drink while floating on the sea. This little girl had honey-colored skin. She was often exposed to the sea breeze. Her skin was a little dry. She was an ordinary girl from a fishing village. After drinking the fish soup, Ning Shu rested here for a night. He planned to leave the next day. She couldn't stay in one place for long. She had to pay for the room. Ning Shu gave the little girl a gold coin. The little girl had never seen a gold coin. This fishing village was self-sufficient. They didn't want to sell their things. Moreover, if they wanted to sell things, the town was very far from here. They didn't know what would happen on the way. However, Ning Shu felt that giving her a gold coin was a little too much. Who would rob a lonely granddaughter? Ning Shu simply gave her some pills and said that she could eat them if she was sick. He took back the gold coin. Ning Shu covered his face. He stepped on the giant dragon head and flew away. It was better to leave. This was only a temporary place to land. Chapter 1887. And Ning Shu clearly felt that the men and women in the fishing village were looking at him strangely. The men were drooling, while the women were wary and pulled back the men beside them. Sometimes, being beautiful was a kind of trouble. Ning Shu stood on the Qijin dragon and flew for a while. Then, he turned around and flew back to the fishing village. As expected, he saw a group of people surrounding the door. They were probably asking for something from them. Fortunately, she took back the gold coin. Ning Shu turned the bird on his shoulder into a huge bird. It was covered in fire and covered the sun all day long. Its cries were deafening. Ning Shu pointed his finger and the ocean began to roar. It formed a huge wave that was about to drown the entire village. I just stayed for a night. Why should I ask for something from them? I didn't give them anything. It was human nature to bully the weak and fear the strong. This pair of grandmother and granddaughter were women. They were weak and had no one to rely on. The stupid people immediately knelt down and begged for the gods' forgiveness. Ning Shu said indifferently, I don't know when I'll come back. If I find out that you killed them, Ning Shu said that and flew away on the back of the firebird. The firebird chirped and flapped its wings as it flew away. Only those who were in awe wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Ning Shu decided to find a place to rest in the future. Her face was really eye-catching. At least in this environment, her beauty wasn't a good thing. Ning Shu sat on the back of the firebird and started to cultivate. The firebird flew for a while and started to move up and down. It couldn't fly anymore. Ning Shu felt that it should lose weight. Ning Shu put his hand on the back of the firebird and injected some spiritual energy. Only then did the firebird become more energetic. What a waste! Ning Shu would stop in places with mountains and rivers to see if there were any herbs to refine the wisdom pill. It would be best if there were some treasures. To be honest, Ning Shu still wanted to go to Mount Olympus. There must be some treasures on the mountain, but there were many gods living there. He would be walking into a trap. Barging in like this was just courting death. Ning Shu gathered the herbs and released her spiritual force to scan the land around her to see if there were any herbs. Some worlds had herbs, and some didn't. If they didn't have herbs, this bird could only be an idiot. Without intelligence, such a large body and strength would attract a lot of attention. He definitely wouldn't have the freedom to be a little bird. Now that she thought about it, she was the one who had harmed this silly bird. Ning Shu facepalmed. Ning Shu wandered around and found two kinds of ingredients. He guessed that no one recognized these things. They were a bit old, and the older they were, the better the medicinal effects. After finding one or two, the rest would be easy to find. At least this world had natural treasures. Ning Shu put away the heavenly materials and earthly treasures he found and went to other places. Ning Shu wanted to find a large city-state. There would be a temple in a large city-state. With a temple, she would be able to know the current situation of the gods and who had become the divine king. How was Zeus now? Was he still alive? Zeus had overthrown his father's tyrannical rule and imprisoned him at the bottom of the earth. Zeus had become the divine king with great authority. Therefore, the previous great demon king was either locked up or dead and turned into something in the world, such as the canopy. He wondered how Zeus was now. The struggle for kingship was very cruel. Ning Shu collected the ingredients for the wisdom pill along the way as she headed towards the big city-states. Finally, she stood in front of one of the city-states. The walls of this city-state were quite tall. Ning Shu had to raise her head to see it. It was a magnificent sight. There were soldiers at the gate. Ning Shu walked in with a veil around her face. She bought some food with gold coins and ate while heading to the temple. This city-state worshipped the fire god Hephaestus. No wonder the walls of this city-state were so high and the buildings were so majestic. The fire god Hephaestus was the god of masonry, the god of carving, and the god of blacksmithing. He was one of the 12 Olympian gods. Fire God's temple was more like a blacksmith's shop than a temple. The female robot made of gold could speak and do all kinds of difficult work. The fire god Hephaestus was the son of the queen of heaven Hera. However, according to legend, the fire god was born with a lame leg and an ugly face. However, his soul and wisdom were very outstanding. He was smart and full of passion. He was also a poor child. When he was born, he was too weak and sickly. His mother, Hera, despised him and threw him off Mount Olympus to get rid of the awkward situation of having such a poor son. He fell into the sea and was saved by a female deity in the sea. She raised him and even opened a blacksmith shop. Later, he was reunited with his mother. Although he was ugly and crippled, he had a beautiful wife, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love, or Venus. However, appearance was a universal thing. A beautiful wife would inevitably be cuckolded. If you wanted to live a good life, you had to be cuckolded. The fire god was a skilled craftsman. He always made beautiful and delicate objects for his wife. However, Venus, the goddess of love, still cheated on him with her brother. The fire god was bitter. The ugliest and most dull man on Mount Olympus turned out to be the most beautiful and romantic goddess in the world, Venus, who was in charge of love and marriage. There were no roses in the world, but because of the birth of Venus, there were roses that represented love and beauty. This was a kind of excessive luck. A blacksmith wearing a precious rose was destined to be a blessing in disguise. In fact, the most famous story about Hephaestus was the luxuriant canopy that his beautiful wife put on his head. Of course, he chose to forgive her. In fact, the couple parted on bad terms. Vienna gave birth to Cupid, the god of love. Cupid's golden and lead arrows were all made by the fire god. Ning Shu and his followers worshipped the statue of the fire god. He asked the priest, "How are the gods now?" "I came from the city of Athens. I heard that something happened. The goddess of victory, Athena, was killed by the god king." The priest could communicate with the gods. When he heard Ning Shu's words, he said, "Don't talk about the gods. It's not our place to talk about them." Ning Shu could only give up. He stayed in the city and went out to look for herbs when he had nothing to do. When he found all the ingredients to make the wisdom pill, he made 5 wisdom pills for the bird. He stuffed all of them into its mouth. If its IQ was low, he could make up for it with pills. After Ning Shu stuffed the pills into its mouth, the fire bird's body swayed. It was about to fall asleep. It snuggled into Ning Shu's chest. Ning Shu caught the bird and threw it to the ground. He didn't know if it was a male or female, but it kept snuggling into his chest. After being thrown to the ground by Ning Shu, the fire bird fell asleep. Its body was probably digesting the effects of the wisdom pill. Chapter 1888. Ning Shu went to the earth god's temple every day. Every time he went, he would pray and ask the priest questions. Until now, there was still no news. Could it be that the gods had not decided who would become the god king? As long as the god king was decided, the fire god would return. The fire god usually did not live in Olympus. When he was young, he was thrown down from the sacred mountain by his own mother. After returning to the sacred mountain, when his mother rebelled against Zeus with the sea goddess Athena, he made a rope. When his mother was hung up, he pleaded with Zeus for mercy. In the end, Zeus kicked his mother down the sacred mountain and crippled her leg. Therefore, the fire god basically did not return to the divine mountain. Ning Shu waited and waited until the flowers withered. She reckoned that the Mount Olympus was not peaceful at all. The longer she waited, the more time she would have to face the dangers in the future calmly. Now, Ning Shu could control hundreds of thin needles. His next goal was to double his strength and control more than 200 thin needles. He could attack groups, but if he could not, in a one-on-one fight, he could imagine hundreds of thin needles piercing his opponent. The explosive power would be enough to blow them into powder. Atomic bombs were just so. The more, the better. Not only in this world, but in other worlds as well, this was a great killing weapon. When he was free, he would pick a bunch of flowers and send them to the fire god's temple and put them in front of the statue to express his goodwill. Ning Shu did not want to meet gods and kill gods. There was no need to make enemies and make enemies all over the world. After a long time, Ning Shu became familiar with the priest of the temple. The priest's position seemed very honorable, but he had to give his all. Ning Shu would occasionally ask the priest and the fire god would return. The priest would only whisper at the divine mountain was not peaceful and that the fire god would need some time to return. Ning Shu wanted to know who the God King was and who he was, but as time passed, Ning Shu did not care who the God King was. She was an ant on the ground. To those high and mighty gods, she was an ant that was not worth mentioning. She was trembling with fear. Ning Shu had been cultivating all this time. Her dantian was getting bigger and bigger as she absorbed the spiritual energy, the power of the fire sun, the power of thunder, and the power of the stars. Not to mention the profoundness of the human body, the dantian was like the universe, and the human body was like a small universe. Even a single cell was like a world. Ning Shu had been cultivating all this time, but his dantian had not burst. As his cultivation deepened, Ning Shu compressed more and more thin needles. Now, there were more than 500 of them. If he released all of them, there would be so many of them that he would suffer from trypophobia. Ning Shu counted the days. It took about 2 months for the fire god to return to the temple. Ning Shu picked a bunch of wildflowers and brought them to the temple. He placed them in front of the statue and looked around, hoping to see the fire god. There were clanging sounds coming from the temple. It should be the god of fire forging weapons. Ning Shu did not rush in directly. He stood in front of the fire god statue and began to pray to the fire god in the divine language. After praying for a while, a man dressed in coarse hemp clothes came out. His face was red and black due to being baked by the fire for a long time. His face was black and red, and one of his legs was limping as he walked. To be honest, the fire god Hephaestus's looks were really not compatible with the beauty goddess Venus. "Are you the one who summoned me?" The fire god's voice was a little loud. Ning Shu bowed. "It's me." "What is it?" Hephaestus asked. Ning Shu hesitated and asked, "I want to know how the god of fire is doing." "How can a small human like you ask about the matters of the gods? Don't ask about such things." The fire god's voice was very loud. Ning Shu bowed. "Thank you for the reminder, fire god, but I know the god of fire god. I want to know how he is doing." The fire god looked at Ning Shu. Although Ning Shu's face was covered, the fire god could tell from her eyes and body that she was a beautiful woman. His father had always been a playboy. Was this woman his father's lover? The fire god's voice was like a bell. "The god of fire god is now Hera. Zeus has been locked up. Don't say you have anything to do with Zeus." Hera had become the god of fire god. That was a good thing. Ning Shu smiled and said, "I see. Thank you for telling me, fire god." Ning Shu thanked the fire god. That meant her situation had come to an end. The fire god nodded and closed the door. Ning Shu left the temple and returned to the place where she was temporarily staying. Since he knew what he needed to know, Ning Shu planned to travel the world and see if there was a world origin. The world was so big. There were bound to be some strange things. Ning Shu packed his things and hummed a little song. He stuffed the sleeping bird into the bag, but it couldn't fit anymore. He forced the bird into the bag. There was a crack. Did the bird break a bone? Whatever. Even if it was broken, it would heal immediately. When Ning Shu opened the door, he saw a woman wearing a crown. She had a strong aura. She was very powerful. Ning Shu's heart jumped. He thought for a moment and said, "I think you look familiar. I think you are the god of fire god, but you are more powerful than her." As for Hera, Ning Shu had no feelings for her at all. Hera raised her eyebrows and looked at the bag in Ning Shu's hands. "You are leaving?" "Yes. I am walking around, but I can't find a place to stay," Ning Shu said. Hera had a mysterious smile on her face. "Don't you want to go to the God Mountain? I will take you there." A smile appeared on Ning Shu's face. "Really? My brother has been talking about you. The only thing he wants is for me to bring you to him. Are you willing to go to the God Mountain?" Ning Shu knew he couldn't refuse. Plus, he wanted to go to the God Mountain. Zeus was still a scourge. He had to deal with Zeus. Ning Shu said excitedly, "Are you really going to take me to the God Mountain? Can the god of fire god give me a god fruit? You know that a woman's face is the most important thing. But with age, nothing can beat time. Is there a fruit that can preserve one's youth forever?" Hera was speechless. What a stupid and shallow woman. Although a woman's face was important, to a god, she was just a toy. For example, although she was a goddess and a god, she was just a toy for a god. Hera got on the chariot and looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu carefully got on the chariot. He looked surprised. "This is my first time riding a god's chariot. Aren't you going to ask me why I am taking you to the God Mountain?" Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu didn't care. He said, "Aren't you taking me to see the God King?" Ning Shu knew, but he didn't show it. Chapter 1889. Now that Hera was the God King, Zeus had been tricked by her. He couldn't take it lying down, so Hera had come. Hera was a woman who could even abandon her own son. Ning Shu, a human woman, was nothing. However, Hera's actions paled in comparison to some male gods who would devour their lovers and sons at the drop of a hat. For example, Zeus's grandfather was afraid of his wife and wanted her to have more children. However, he was afraid that he would lose his position if he had too many children. Thus, he held back his pregnancy and forbade it. What he had done was simply astonishing. Since Zeus wanted a human woman, it didn't matter at all. Even Hera used this method to humiliate Zeus. "Since you're lustful, I'll give you a woman. However, you can only be locked up in Tartarus, which is deeper than hell." Even the immortal gods were afraid of this vast, dark region. This was where Nyx's palace was located, surrounded by black clouds. Zeus's enemies were locked up behind a bronze wall. The entrance was locked by a huge bronze door, which was the masterpiece of the god of fire, Hephaestus. Now, Zeus was locked up there with the Titans and Zeus's enemies. It was awesome. Hera's chariot flew quickly. Ning Shu was amazed and yearned for a better life. Hera's mouth twitched. This place was deeper than hell, a place that even the gods feared. A human woman in such a bottomless place would only be filled with endless fear. Ning Shu propped up her chin and asked Hera, "The God King must have mentioned me often." Hera glanced at Ning Shu. "Yes, often. He said you killed Athena and Poseidon, and that you have the power of the god of destruction." Ning Shu heard this and laughed. Zeus has always said such things. Whatever he says, it's the truth. Hera narrowed her eyes. "Do you really have the power of the god of destruction? I've lived with my brother for such a long time. I can tell whether she's telling the truth or not." Ning Shu nodded. "Actually, I have some power. This power was actually given to me by Zeus. Previously, the sea goddess had taken a fancy to my beauty and wanted to take advantage of me. Fortunately, Zeus was there, and because he was afraid that something would happen again, he gave me some power. It's only enough to protect myself, and it's not much power. Hera pondered. Could it be that Zeus's perverted younger brother killed Poseidon because he wanted to compete with Poseidon for her beauty? Or was it because Zeus had always wanted to kill Poseidon, and because Poseidon was too ambitious, Zeus took this opportunity to kill him? However, Poseidon's trident was not easy to deal with. If the two of them clashed, it would be a landslide. Hera had many thoughts running through her mind. She looked at the superficial woman and stopped thinking about it. She was just a human girl. How could she not cause any trouble after being sent to prison? Now, my brother is no longer the God King. I'm the God King now, Hera said majestically. Ning Shu smiled and said, congratulations on becoming the God King. Hera raised her heroic eyebrows. She could feel the sincerity in Ning Shu's tone. Shouldn't you feel sorry for my brother? What's there to feel sorry for? Zeus is Zeus. Without the God King position, he's still Zeus. There's no difference. Ning Shu did not care. It was not up to her to decide who became the God King, and she did not want to care. As long as Zeus was not the God King, it was fine. Hera glanced at Ning Shu and did not say anything. Soon, they arrived at Mount Olympus. From afar, Mount Olympus looked like a sacred and steep mountain. It was majestic, towering among the mountains of Greece. Mount Olympus was surrounded by clouds all year round. 2/3 of the year, it was covered in snow, and its highest peak pierced the clouds. The mountain slopes were covered with oak, chestnut, beech, sycamore, and pine trees. The scenery was very beautiful. In winter, the mountain peaks were covered in snow. In summer, the valleys were covered in trees. Every day, when the sun rose in the east, the first ray of light shone on the peak of this sacred mountain. When the sun set and the moon rose in the east, the glorious peak of Mount Olympus was bathed in the setting sun. Above the sea of clouds was a colonnade. In front of the colonnade was a garden with exotic flowers and plants. The gods living on Mount Olympus created the Olympic Games. Zeus, the god of gods, defeated Cronus in wrestling. Apollo defeated Eris in boxing and surpassed Hermes in running. The Greeks would wear laurel crowns for each winner of a competition. The winners with laurel crowns were worshipped as gods. The most famous poets would dedicate hymns to them. Ning Shu stopped in front of a vast hall. He got off the chariot and looked at the towering pillars. There were also rabbits running in the forest. They were very cute. Ning Shu asked, "Where's Zeus?" "My little brother, he's in another place right now. Once he's there, you'll be able to be with him forever." Hera sat on the divine throne, looking incomparably dignified. Ning Shu grinned. "Okay, let me see Zeus. I'll take good care of him." Hera was speechless. "Silly woman. What's going on between you and my brother?" Her brother gritted his teeth at the mention of this woman. He looked like he had a deep hatred for her. He didn't look like someone who would sleep next to her. Zeus prided himself on being a playboy. When it came to the women sleeping next to him, he treated them with kindness and authority. But it was rare for him to hate such a woman. "He's just so annoying." Ning Shu waved his hand and smiled. "No matter what Zeus does, I believe that he's doing it for my own good. It's also for the sake of us being together." Hera was speechless. "Idiot. Since you want to go, let's go." Hera pulled Ning Shu deep into the ground. This place was very deep. The distance between the ground and the sky was the same as the distance between the ground and Tartaros. In fact, if a bronze anvil fell from the sky, it would take 10 days to reach the ground. Then it would take another 10 days to reach Tartaros. Ning Shu took out a buckwheat biscuit from his bag and munched on it. They were in free fall anyway. He didn't know when they would reach. Ning Shu's foolishness made Hera look at him. He was really stupid. He wasn't afraid at all. He was a fool who didn't know anything. How could he trust her and Zeus so much? Wouldn't he do anything to her? Do you want some? Ning Shu handed the biscuit to Hera. Hera refused. Gods didn't eat things from the human world. Hera no longer paid any attention to Ning Shu. After this meeting, she would never see this woman again. Her bones had already melted deep into the ground. Ning Shu munched on the biscuit and drank some water. He said to Hera, "Can you give me a fruit of eternal youth?" Hera was speechless. Chapter 1890. Hera brought Ning Shu to a bronze door. She opened it and entered a palace. It was dark all around. Ning Shu's eyes took a while to adjust to the darkness. Everything was foggy, and there was the sound of wind. It was very rhythmic. It wasn't the sound of wind, but the sound of breathing. There were 3 titans sleeping here. "Brother, I'm here to see you." As Hera spoke, there was the sound of chains rattling. Ning Shu saw that Zeus' hands and feet were chained up. Even his abdomen was chained up. Zeus' hair was disheveled and he was in a sorry state. When he saw Hera, he was very excited. When he saw Ning Shu next to her, he became even more violent. If it weren't for the chains holding him back, he would have pounced on Ning Shu. He looked like he wanted to eat Ning Shu alive. Ning Shu hid behind Hera and asked fearfully, "Why is Zeus a prisoner?" Hera turned around and smiled. "He's not the god king anymore. Is he still going to live on Mount Olympus?" Ning Shu looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He was dumbfounded. "Am I going to accompany Zeus here?" "Aha!" Hera snorted. When Zeus saw Ning Shu's dead body, he was so angry that he rushed over. The chains rattled as he pulled. "Hera, kill this woman. Listen to me. Kill this woman. Don't let this woman live." Ning Shu immediately said, "Don't pretend at this point. It's no use pretending to be hostile." Ning Shu then said to Hera, "I don't know him." Hera was elegant and cold. "It's too late to say that now," she said indifferently. Hera said to Zeus, "You're lonely here. Since you've been talking about her, I brought her here to accompany you." Zeus was shocked. He wanted Hera to kill this woman. He couldn't let her threaten God, but she'd brought her here. He was tied up and was this woman's punching bag. Why did his sister hate him so much? Ning Shu's expression was unsightly as she said to Hera, "Seeing as we're both women, could it be that you have the heart to see a beautiful woman like me buried in such a dark place? And you won't even give me the divine fruit of eternal youth?" Hera replied, "I'm doing you a favor. I'm giving my husband to you. Are you touched?" Ning Shu was speechless. "Thank you for your kindness. If it's possible, I want to have sex with you." Ning Shu was about to cry. Hera walked in front of Zeus and patted him on the shoulder, gently dusting it off. "Little brother, I know you can't lack women by your side. Now that I've brought you a woman to accompany you, consider her as your elder sister. Now that I'm the divine king, I have to manage the gods, so I don't have much time to visit you. Consider this woman to accompany you in my place." Ning Shu was speechless. "Elder sister, are you sure you're not purposely stabbing your little brother's heart?" The corner of Zeus's mouth twitched. His golden hair was disheveled, and he looked very miserable. He no longer had the grace of the divine king. He no longer had the power and authority to rule the world. Much of his charm had been taken away. "Elder sister, if you don't kill this woman, you'll regret it. You'll definitely regret it." Zeus was panting heavily as he spoke through gritted teeth. If he left this woman here, his life would be in danger. "Don't worry, little brother, she'll always be by your side. If worse comes to worst, I'll grant her eternal life so she can accompany you forever. How about that?" Hera looked like a loving and tolerant wife. Ning Shu waved his hand. "Don't grant me eternal life. I don't want this place. I don't know him. Don't make me stay here. Seeing Ning Shu like this, Zeus groaned and almost spat out a mouthful of golden blood. What a hypocritical and pretentious woman. Don't grant her eternal life. She'll be a great enemy of the gods. Elder sister, why won't you believe me? Zeus said earnestly. Zeus was really tired, so tired that he felt like he was about to die. Most importantly, if this woman stayed here, he would be in danger. Zeus didn't want to die yet. He wanted to make a comeback. If she could kill Athena and Poseidon, she could definitely kill him while he was tied up and unarmed. Hera's actions were simply vicious, filled with jealousy and ugliness. Hera tidied up Zeus's hair. When elder sister has time, I'll come and see you. Take good care of him. Hera flicked her sleeves and left. When she left, she added more restrictions and chains to the copper door. After Hera left, Ning Shu and Zeus stared at each other. Apart from the sound of the Titans breathing, the air was terrifyingly quiet. Zeus moved his body, and the chains that bound him suddenly rattled. Ning Shu sat on the ground and looked at the embarrassed Zeus. How did you end up like this? Who did this to you? Zeus's eyes were red, especially when he saw his enemy. Ning Shu released his psychic energy and found that Hera hadn't gone far. Why are you blaming me for everything? You said you were the most beautiful woman, and Poseidon wasn't worthy of me. Ning Shu shrugged and took out a fruit. He wiped it on his skirt and took a bite. Ning Shu found that the fruits in this world were very sweet. Even the wild fruits were juicy and sweet. It was probably because there was less pollution and more spirit chi. What nonsense are you talking about? Zeus found that he wasn't on the same track as this crazy woman. They weren't talking about the same thing. If you have the guts to do it, then you have the guts to admit it. Zeus stared at Ning Shu. You killed Poseidon and Athena. Hey, weren't you the one who killed them? Why are you pushing the blame to me? Do you have a plan to take back the throne? Fine, I killed Poseidon and Athena, Ning Shu said casually. Zeus closed his eyes. He didn't want to see this woman now. Zeus's hands were bound by chains. He had to stand like this because the chains were too short. He couldn't even sit or lie down. Can you let me out? Ning Shu asked Zeus. Shut up. Zeus suddenly opened his eyes and shouted in exasperation. Ning Shu sighed. I'm going to be buried in this dark place. Just thinking about it makes me feel bad. Zeus, crazy. Ning Shu kept talking about how beautiful he was while crying and complaining that he didn't want to stay here. Hera, who was standing in front of the bronze door, left. 39/39163/L. Chapter 1891. Once Hera left, Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to act anymore. He munched on the fruit and looked at Zeus. You look terrible now. Zeus ignored Ning Shu. He felt that Hera was a Satan. She didn't listen to anything he said and even brought this woman here. They were locked in the same cell and had to face each other day and night. Hera wanted him dead. Not only did she steal the throne of the God King, she also wanted to kill him. Even if he had to find another woman to compensate, he shouldn't have found this woman. Zeus felt that he might not be able to keep his life after killing Athena and Poseidon. He didn't want to provoke Ning Shu. Ning Shu moved his neck, and it made cracking sounds. Zeus talked about Hera every day and said that she was a threat to the gods. He talked about threats every day and incited more gods to oppose her. The most important thing was to get rid of Zeus. Zeus looked at Ning Shu warming up. He looked calm, but inside, he was scared. What do you want to do? Ning Shu wanted to do something, but Hera appeared again. Ning Shu was speechless. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to give you a massage and massage. Ning Shu reached out and squeezed Zeus's shoulder. Is it comfortable? Your arm will be crippled sooner or later. You have to keep it flowing. Zeus frowned. This woman was crazy. Hera was eavesdropping and didn't leave. Ning Shu asked, is it comfortable? What are you trying to do? Zeus didn't understand what Ning Shu was trying to do. Anyway, she was a mentally ill woman. Next time when your sister comes, can you ask her for a fruit of eternal youth? Ning Shu asked. Seeing that I've been taking care of you. Hera was speechless. Zeus squeezed out 2 chuckles from his throat. After Hera left, Ning Shu stopped squeezing. He didn't know what Hera was trying to do. Maybe she wanted to see what her relationship with Zeus was. Rather than trusting an outsider like her, she would rather trust her own brother. After all, her brother was the one who maintained the divine system. Ning Shu prepared to wander around. This place was quite big, and there were many people imprisoned here. There were Titans and Zeus's enemies. What if he accidentally released Zeus's enemies and killed Zeus? This place was very dark, and everything was hazy. He couldn't see clearly. This place was shrouded in black clouds. 2333's voice rang in Ning Shu's mind, I've detected the fluctuation of the world's origin here, but it's very weak. Generally speaking, the fluctuation of the world's origin shouldn't be this weak. It's a little similar, but also a little different. But don't get your hopes up. Ning Shu, oh. Knowing that this place had the world origin, Ning Shu was quite happy. Although there was a certain probability that it was impossible, there was also a certain probability that it was. Ning Shu asked 2333, what element do you think the world origin could be? 2333 thought for a moment and said, I don't know. The fluctuation is too weak. It might not even be the world origin. Don't get your hopes up. If you're disappointed, you'll scold me again. Ning Shu, I realized that you've been playing the role of a white lotus recently. Scolding you? You're wronged. Ning Shu rolled his eyes, as if he was the one who was scolded more by 2333. Okay, whatever you say is right. 2333 sneered, you're a hard person to please. Are you going to quarrel with me the moment you appear? Ning Shu walked around. This place was very dark, and there were twists and turns everywhere. Ning Shu felt like he was lost and couldn't return to Zeus's place. Ning Shu also saw a very big Titan. The chains that bound the Titan were very big, and they were piled up like a mountain in front of her. She was snoring loudly. She wasn't wearing any clothes. She was just using a huge cloth to cover her indescribable place. Ning Shu tiptoed and followed 2333's directions. The more he walked, the darker it became. Ning Shu could only release his power of the will to explore bit by bit. It was so dark. Could it be the world origin of the dark element? If he could get the world origin of the dark element, this world would be very lucky. Light and dark were not as common as the 5 elements. The 5 elements were not easy to find, let alone light and dark. Ning Shu talked to 2333, it's so dark. Could it be the world origin of the dark element? Maybe, but the fluctuation is too weak. It's very likely that something else is causing it to be so dark. Besides, this place is deep underground. There is no sunlight. It's normal for it to be dark. Ning Shu retreated and took the burning torch in the corridor. He took the torch and rushed into the darkness. But Ning Shu didn't go far before the torch went out. It was swallowed by the darkness. It didn't go out because there was no air. Ning Shu didn't feel suffocated. If it went on like this, would she also be swallowed by the darkness? Ning Shu gritted his teeth and continued to walk. Without the torch, Ning Shu could only release his power of the will to explore the surrounding situation. But slowly, the range of his exploration was shrinking. Darkness, pure darkness swallowed Ning Shu's power of the will. Ning Shu stopped. He was in a dilemma. If he moved forward, he wouldn't be able to see, and even his power of the will would be swallowed. It was a bit dangerous to be blind and deaf. Ning Shu released his Qi Jin dragon to explore the way, but it didn't go far before it was swallowed by the darkness. First 10 steps, then try to turn left. 2333 Ning Shu said, I'm following the fluctuation. Now I can only walk like this. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Ning Shu counted the steps and then began to turn left. Ning Shu was like a blind man. Raise your foot, there are. Let me count, 28 steps. 2333 said. Ning Shu said, wow, that's pretty good. What do you mean? 2333 asked. What do you mean, what do you mean? Ning Shu found that there was a gap in his communication with 2333. It was a simple thing. I think you're mocking me. 2333 said. Ning Shu raised his foot and stepped on the steps. I'm not mocking you. I'm sincerely praising you. 2333 didn't deny it. Obviously, he didn't believe Ning Shu's words. After counting 23 steps, Ning Shu stopped and stretched out his foot to explore the surrounding situation. Ning Shu squatted down and touched the surroundings. Since no one saw him, he might as well crawl. His hand was full of bumps, and he touched a stone of unknown material. What you touched is a little bit of the fluctuation of the world's origin, but it doesn't seem to be the origin of the world. 2333 said. Put it away. Ning Shu said casually. After a trip, there was at least something. 39/39163/L. Chapter 1892. Ning Shu groped around and even hit his head. He also touched something warm. He didn't know what it was, but it was soft. Fuck, could it be that I've touched a sleeping titan? But titans didn't snore like thunder. Ning Shu hurriedly stepped back and touched another stone. Take it. Ning Shu groped around and didn't find anything. Ning Shu turned around and crawled back. He fell down the steps. Where was this place? There were steps. Seeing the light, his eyes hurt. He covered his eyes for a while before he felt better. He almost blinded his titanium eyes. Returning to Zeus, Ning Shu rubbed his chin and sized up Zeus. How should he deal with Zeus? Should he just kill him or cut off his tongue? Being stared at by Ning Shu, Zeus couldn't help but open his eyes. He saw that Ning Shu's face was covered in dust. He didn't know what this woman was doing. Ning Shu vaguely heard footsteps. He scanned with his mental power. Fuck, Hera was here again. Ning Shu immediately cracked a smile and asked, are you hungry? Do you want to eat? I have some moldy buckwheat bread in my bag. Do you want it? Psycho. Zeus said unceremoniously. Ning Shu laughed out loud, then I'll give you a massage. Can you tell your elder sister to give me a divine fruit that can preserve my youth, and then take me away from here? I'm as beautiful as a flower, I can't wilt in this dark place where there's no daylight. Zeus chuckled. Hera opened the bronze door and walked around for a while before entering. Brother, are you alright? Sister, I only have one request. That is to kill her, Zeus said. Ning Shu said, you're so annoying. You even said you wanted to kill me. You want me to be buried with you. Can't you give me a way out? I'm alive to bring beauty to the world. My beauty illuminates the world. Ning Shu flipped his hair, causing dust to fly up. His face was the color of dirt. Hera stood to the side and said in a dignified manner, little brother, are you not satisfied with this woman? Although she's a little silly, at least she doesn't complain and will take good care of you. Ning Shu immediately said, yes, he's not satisfied with me. Take me away. Hera ignored Ning Shu. Little brother, are you uncomfortable here? Ning Shu felt that Hera was here to spread salt. How could Zeus be comfortable with his arm hanging? There was an ascetic monk who hung his arm up and crippled it. It's purely because I feel much better after seeing that you're not doing well. Zeus looked at his sister/wife. We're husband and wife. Why are you doing this to me? I'm magnanimous enough to let a woman accompany you. What's there to be dissatisfied about? Hera asked. Little brother, don't you like women the most? Ning Shu interrupted. Actually, I like women too. I came here for the divine fruit of eternal youth. I don't want the fruit anymore. Can you take me away? Stay with my little brother, Hera said. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu asked Hera, I saw a very dark place. What's that place? Don't go there. Gods will be swallowed up and then you'll get lost. Don't die. Let my little brother enjoy some tenderness. Hera smiled and left. Hera's reaction was normal. She was disappointed in her husband, especially a lecherous husband who had countless lovers and even men. Now that Hera was the divine king, there were plenty of young men. As soon as Hera left, Ning Shu sighed. There was movement in the bag. The little firebird had woken up from its slumber. Ning Shu opened the bag and looked at the bird. After eating the wisdom pill, its eyes had become much more spirited and were filled with the light of wisdom. Hey! Hey! The firebird mimicked, but its voice was very shrill. At least there was someone who could talk. Zeus looked at the firebird with an arrogant gaze. It was just a low-level creature. Hera would come here whenever she had nothing to do. Ning Shu basically knew how often Hera would come. She would only come here once in a while. Staying in this dark place, Ning Shu didn't know whether it was day or night. Ning Shu looked at Zeus. Do you want me to save you? Zeus suddenly opened its eyes and looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. You said you want to save me. Ning Shu nodded. He condensed a dagger in his hand and slowly walked towards Zeus. Zeus retreated, but it was chained and couldn't move at all. Ning Shu pinched Zeus' chin. Zeus tilted its head. What are you doing? You tell Hera every day that you want to kill me. I have to make you speechless, Ning Shu said indifferently. You're so vicious. Zeus stared at Ning Shu with wide eyes. Oh, according to the normal situation, I should risk my life to save you, then help you fight for the throne. You don't care about what happened before, and I'll be the woman behind a successful man. Zeus' eyes flashed. It's pretty good. What's so good about it? Tell me, what am I doing this for? First, I don't want your money. Second, I don't love you. I don't rely on you mentally. Why am I doing this? You don't rely on me financially or mentally. What's the use of you? Zeus was speechless. He knew that this woman was just playing with him. She was cold-hearted and heartless. Ning Shu released many fine needles that were as thin as cow's hair. They shot into Zeus' forehead. Zeus wanted to dodge, but he was tied up and couldn't. The great power of the needles directly destroyed Zeus' brain. Tears of blood flowed out of Zeus' eyes as he roared in pain. Zeus' divinity exploded into several pieces. Zeus' head drooped. However, Zeus was in a vegetative state now. His divinity wasn't completely destroyed. Zeus was dead, a living dead. Perhaps it would take a long time for him to wake up and repair his divinity. However, at that time, Zeus would be Zeus and not Zeus. He would be in a deep sleep, just like the Titan that was locked here. The Titan was alive, but Zeus was dead. Ning Shu wanted Zeus' body to be intact. Only then would Hera be at ease. If Zeus escaped, Hera would be hunted all over the world. Ning Shu took the bird to a dark passage. He took off his shoes and threw them on the ground. He didn't take the bag or anything. He went to the bronze door and pushed it. There was no way to open it. The Vulcan's craftsmanship was damn good. Ning Shu's eyes turned invisible. He ran to the sleeping Titan and kicked it. The Titan didn't wake up. Ning Shu took the needles and exploded them. The Titan was pierced awake by the huge force. It immediately roared and stood up. It was as if the world was shaking. The huge iron chains seemed to collide with each other. The sound was deafening. He didn't believe that the Olympian gods didn't care about this place. The Titan that rebelled was locked up here. 39/39163/L. Chapter 1893. The Titan's strength couldn't be underestimated. Back then, Zeus had suppressed these rebels with great difficulty. Once there was movement, Hera would definitely react. She would open the bronze door and escape at top speed. Who is it? Who is it that disturbed my sleep? The Titan's voice was so loud that it could give people a concussion. The invisible Ning Shu stood in front of the bronze door. When Hera opened the door, Ning Shu hurriedly left. He had to leave this place and live a normal life. No rule could last for long, even if it was a god system. The current gods were already going downhill. This time, Hera wasn't the only one who came. There were many gods as well. As soon as the bronze door opened, Ning Shu ran away. As for the Titan, he caused a ruckus and vented for a while. Under the suppression of the gods, he had no choice but to fall into a deep sleep. Ning Shu sat on the spiritual energy dragon and flew up. After flying for a long time, he appeared on Mount Olympus. The invisible Ning Shu saw many red fruits hanging on the branches. Dewdrops streaked across the fruits. They must be delicious. Ning Shu casually plucked one, but he couldn't. The fruit was tightly stuck to the tree. Ning Shu gave up. He saw the fruit on the ground, and it was still intact. He picked it up, wiped it on his skirt, and took a bite. It was too sweet. Ning Shu hugged his skirt and picked up the fruit. There were many fruits on the ground. Ning Shu picked up a few and hurriedly left. This kind of behavior of snatching food from the tiger's mouth should stop. Ning Shu hurriedly flew away. Perhaps it was because of the movements in the underworld, no one cared about Ning Shu. Hera looked at the Titan who had suddenly awakened. She joined forces with the gods to seal the Titan again. The Titan fell unwillingly. When Hera went to check on Zeus, she found that he had lost all signs of life. Medusa wasn't here. The package was here. There were some rotten fruits and bread in the package. Where was the woman? Hera touched Zeus' face with a melancholy expression. This person wasn't only her brother, but also her husband. Hera searched everywhere for Ning Shu, and finally found Ning Shu's dirty shoes in the dark tunnel. Could that woman have been so stupid as to run here? That was a place where even gods would be devoured and lost. Could it be that he couldn't stand the loneliness and darkness here and couldn't find a way out, so he decided to take a risk? A cornered dog might jump over the wall and go in. Hera turned around and left, bringing her brother's divine body back to Mount Olympus and placing it in a crystal coffin. Hera knew that Zeus might not wake up for a long time, or he might not wake up at all. As for how Zeus died, Hera didn't really care. So what if he was a womanizer when he was alive? What woman would be by his side when he was lying in a coffin at this time? Hera touched Zeus' face in the coffin. Brother, the tea cools down. Where are those women now? No matter how much you fear me and say that I'm jealous, it's me, the jealous woman, who's by your side. Aren't you sad? Watch me become the divine king. Ning Shu didn't know how long he had been flying. Ning Shu only stopped when he saw smoke coming out of the kitchen. He washed his face in the stream in front of the village and walked into the village. Sounds of singing could be heard in the village. The lyrics were catchy and quite interesting. It was a beautiful rural scene. The women's golden hair was tied into braids. They were beautiful and cute. It was Ning Shu's first time seeing such a peaceful atmosphere. He stood to the side and looked at the girls and customers singing on the street. Ning Shu felt like he was watching an opera. Ning Shu settled down in this town and ate fresh bread. There were beautiful flowers in the yard, and the fences of the yard were covered with morning glories and purple morning glory flowers. It was a beautiful European scene. But after staying for a while, Ning Shu left. Anyway, he was in this world. He might as well walk around. Maybe he would meet the world's origin. On the way, Ning Shu had to teach the retarded bird to talk. Now, it could basically communicate. But most of the time, Ning Shu wouldn't let it talk. This was because other religions were starting to appear and even started to kill witches. If there was a talking bird by his side, he might not be a witch, but he would definitely be seen as a weirdo. The light of God gradually disappeared. The world was so dangerous. He had to have the power to protect himself. Ning Shu continued to cultivate. He left behind what he should so that Medusa could protect him. Mission completed. Do you want to leave the mission world? 2333 Ning Shu said. Ning Shu let out a long breath. This world was really tiring for Ning Shu. Surviving in the cracks. Ning Shu didn't have to deal with them. These gods would slowly disappear. Humans were the masters. When humans awakened, God would be them. God was just something that humans relied on when they were ignorant and helpless. Even when they couldn't explain it, they used God as an explanation. Rather than saying that they were in awe of God, it was more like they were in awe of nature and the unknown. Ning Shu nodded. Let's go. Ning Shu patted the little firebird's head and didn't say anything. Ning Shu supported his head with his hand and left Medusa's beautiful body. His head shook and he appeared in the system space. Ning Shu saw 2 stones on the coffee table. They were the 2 stones that she touched. Surprisingly, one of the stones was black and the other was white. One was like granite and the other was like coal. Ning Shu picked up the 2 stones and looked at them. What were these? These are the stones with the fluctuations of the world's origin. Ning Shu asked suspiciously. One black and one white. Maybe. But they haven't matured yet. Maybe you can get someone to cover them. Cover them? You're hatching eggs. Ning Shu was speechless. That's the theory. Doesn't Mei Ziqing have a fire-type world's origin? Get him to cover it for you. To form the origin, you need the power of the origin. With the power of the origin, you can form the origin faster, 2333 said. Basically, there's a 50% chance that it's a light-type or dark-type world's origin. To maintain the balance between black and white, the chances of these 2 elements appearing at the same time are higher. Ning Shu looked at the 2 stones. 2 of them. And they were 2 origin of the world. But they hadn't matured yet. How long do you need to cover them? It wasn't good to keep them in front of Xiaohua's chest. It was too troublesome. With Mei Ziqing's protective nature, he didn't know if he would help. I don't know how long it will take. The formation of an origin of the world requires certain conditions. And the time varies. Maybe it will form immediately, or maybe it will take thousands of years, 2333 said. Ning Shu, thousands of years? That would be too late. Although he didn't know if they could hatch the origin of the world, Ning Shu was still very satisfied. At least he had gained something. Ning Shu opened the chat system and contacted Mei Ziqing. But he was told by Mei Ziqing's system that Mei Ziqing had gone to do a mission. Ning Shu secretly asked where Xiaohua was. A bold video of a child with a huge chest dripping with fragrant perspiration and large balls about to overflow. Please follow the WeChat public number EI New May 222, long press for 3 seconds to copy. Chapter 1894. Falling in Love with You, Transmigrating Canon Fodder Female Supporting Character Counterattack. The timing was not good. Mei Ziqing had gone on a mission. Where was Xiaohua? Mei Ziqing's system said, Ning Shu. Ning Shu wanted to lure Xiaohua out and stuff the 2 stones in front of his chest. Now that Mei Ziqing had forbidden him from going out, things were a little tricky. It was all Pan Chen's fault for kidnapping an ignorant child. Now, Mei Ziqing did not dare to let Xiaohua out. Ning Shu did not give up. The system replied, Ning Shu. Ning Shu checked his rewards. This mission was tiring. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27. Level, Super Mission Taker. Contribution card, 147, 10 million points for 1 contribution card. Soul value, 7 health value, 6 wisdom, 9 luck, 9 charm, 4 mental power, 7 martial power, 8 aptitude, 5 faith, 11297880 merit, 592700 soul strength, 39 authorization ticket, none law comprehended, water rule. Pure heart, none items, calm halo, heart calming pill, faith halo, amulet 4, upgraded amulet 2 honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor skills, 5th ring shooting technique. Intermediate close combat technique, intermediate martial arts, intermediate poison technique, beginner business management knowledge, beginner code programming, beginner lawyer skill, sage ghost catching skill, beginner cooking skill, intermediate embroidery skill. Auras, mother of the world, queen's blessing, sister model worker, Chen Shi's blessing, leader aura, grass blessing, best friend for life, Miao Miao Miao's blessing. Healer of the dying, Zhu Sun Yang's blessing, founding woman, Chen Ermiai's blessing, beauty of the law, Chen Ning's blessing, bane of the blood clan, Jasmine's blessing, communication between races, by San Yang's blessing, heart of the brave, Wang Ying's blessing. Fulfill the mission taker Medusa's wish, not be raped, not be cursed, escape fate. Mission completion rate, 100%. Mission reward obtained, 10 point cards, 10 attribute points, 80% of soul power, 10300 faith power, including accumulated in previous worlds, 50 merit points. It felt pretty good. 80% of the power of the soul. 80% was already the limit. Medusa had contributed a portion of her power of the soul, and she had taken 80% of it. 2333 had taken 10%, and the main system had taken 10%. 80% was not a small amount. Ning Shu added 10 attribute points and waited for Mei Ziqing's reply. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27. Level, Super Mission Taker. Points card, 14,710, 10 million for 1 point card. Soul value, 71 HP, 61 intelligence, 91 luck, 92 charm, 41 spiritual power, 71 combat power, 81 aptitude, 52 faith, 112978010300 merit, 59270050 soul strength, 3, 9 10 authorization ticket, none law comprehended, water law. Pure heart, none items, calm halo, heart calming pill, faith halo, protective charm 4, upgraded protective charm 2 honorary titles, goddess of war, selfless ancestor skills, 5th ring shooting technique, intermediate close combat technique, intermediate martial arts, intermediate poison technique, beginner business management knowledge, beginner code programming, beginner lawyer skill, sage ghost catching skill, beginner cooking skill, intermediate embroidery skill. Auras, mother of the world, queen's blessing, sister model worker, Chen Shi's blessing, leader aura, grass blessing, lifelong friend, Miao Miao Miao's blessing. Healer of the dying, Zhu Sun Yang's blessing, founding woman, Chen Ermiai's blessing, beauty of the law, Chen Ning's blessing, bane of the blood clan, Jasmine's blessing, communication between races, by San Yang's blessing, heart of the brave, Wang Ying's blessing. Ning Shu sat cross-legged. After absorbing 80% of the power of the soul, he looked at his own soul. It had become stronger, like jelly, and even the texture of his skin had appeared. It was finally starting to strengthen his soul. The power of the soul that he had lost was slowly recovering. Ning Shu looked at the interface of the chat system. Mei Ziqing's system still hadn't replied. What was going on? Could it be that Mei Ziqing's system was paralyzed? Ning Shu looked at the two stones. He had to ask Little Flame for help. Otherwise, if he just threw them aside, he didn't know when they would be able to form the origin of the world. Now, he would let Little Flame act as a hen. Ning Shu wanted to see how Medusa lived after she returned. To be honest, that era was really turbulent. It wasn't easy to live. What Ning Shu didn't expect was that Medusa actually returned to live on an isolated island. She decorated her house like a fairyland, with many flowers. Firebird followed beside Medusa. One day, a man floated to the island, a handsome man. Medusa saved him, and the two of them seemed to be in love. They even had 2 children. However, this man couldn't stand the loneliness on the island and wanted to leave. Moreover, in the process of interacting with Medusa, he discovered that Medusa had power. The outside world was wantonly hunting down witches. Witches were the symbol of evil, and they hurt people who were cursed. Now, his wife was a witch. The man lied and said that he wanted to go home before coming back to fetch Medusa. Medusa let the man leave, but when the man returned, he brought people from the religion. Medusa directly capsized the boat and blew it up. As for her husband, Medusa killed him. Medusa raised the 2 children alone. Ning Shu was speechless. Damn, this plot. Medusa killed her husband so decisively. Ning Shu was a little shocked. However, if someone threatened her, why didn't she destroy them? With the 2 children by her side, Medusa wouldn't be so lonely. He had sacrificed his soul energy and ended up in such a miserable state. He had sacrificed his soul energy for nothing. He had wasted all his strength. Ning Shu propped up his chin and looked at the beautiful Medusa. He gave her a thumbs up. Well done. Perhaps some people would say that Medusa was cruel and merciless, even killing her own husband. However, Medusa's husband also brought people from the religion. If Medusa was really arrested as a witch, what awaited her would be a tragic fate. Especially since she had 2 children, the descendants of witches would definitely be killed. At this time, why didn't the man think that this was his wife, the wife who gave birth to his children and even saved his life? TSK, Ning Shu turned off the video. The chat system dinged. It was Mei Ziqing's system reply. That's it for reading novels. Chapter 1895. Falling in Love with You, Transmigrating Canon Fodder female supporting character Counterattack. The system said that Mei Ziqing had agreed and was going to teleport Xiaohua to Water City. Ning Shu exchanged for a beautiful sachet from the exchange store. Then, he placed 2 stones into the sachet. It was a beautiful sachet. Then, he hung it on Xiaohua and asked him to take care of it. Of course, when asking someone for help, he had to thank them and treat them to a meal. Ning Shu explained the situation to Mei Ziqing. He didn't want Mei Ziqing to throw it away if she hung it on Xiaohua. That would be a trap. Mei Ziqing asked the system, Ning Shu. Mei Ziqing agreed, but said that if there was any danger, she could throw Ning Shu's things away. Ning Shu, it wasn't easy to find it. If she threw it away, she would fight with her. To Water City, Ning Shuchao said to 2333. 2333 said, the people at the auction house said that they want to move out of Water City. Leave Water City. Ning Shu, oh, and they want you to open the barrier and let them go. A city's auction house can attract a lot of customers, 2333 said. Ning Shu, oh, just say that I'm doing a mission. Don't say anything else, just lock them up for a while. You scared me by saying that you want to leave. She didn't lose anything when the auction house wasn't open. Without the auction house, there would be another business that would enter the auction house. If you don't want to do it, someone else will. Go and ask them if they're determined to leave, Ning Shu said lightly. If she left, it would be easier for her to hold a business auction and make a profit. 2333, okay. Ning Shu stood on the green flagstone of Water City and walked towards the restaurant. A fiery red Xiaohua was squatting in front of the restaurant. Ning Shu walked over and Xiaohua stood up. Auntie Ning Shu. Auntie will take you to eat something delicious. When they arrived at the restaurant, Ning Shu ordered some dishes, then took out a sachet and said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, I want to ask you for a favor. Take a look at this and see if you can help me raise it. Okay. Xiaohua agreed without saying anything. Ning Shu said, you must carry it with you. Don't lose it. I got it. Xiaohua hung the sachet around his neck and stuffed it into his clothes. It was considered a personal item. Ning Shu couldn't help but pat Xiaohua's shoulder. You're such a good kid. Ning Shu put some food into Xiaohua's bowl. A man wearing a deep robe with wide sleeves walked over. Ning Shu cupped his hands and said, Si Tian greets the city lord. Boss Si, what's the matter? Si Tian was the boss of the casino. This guy didn't look like someone from the casino. He was gentle, unhurried, and had a broad chest. He had a very elegant temperament, like a beautiful zhuge liang. Si Tian specially came to find the city lord. I have something to discuss with the city lord. Si Tian said unhurriedly. Ning Shu nodded. Have a seat. Ning Shu ordered an extra pot of tea and asked, what's the matter? City lord, I heard that the people from the auction house are planning to withdraw from Water City. Si Tian poured a cup of tea. His actions were elegant. He held the cup in one hand and pinched his sleeve with the other as he took a sip of tea. Ning Shu said indifferently, who told you that? It's just a guess. The people from the auction house probably didn't expect the city lord to be so domineering and directly seal the auction house. They must have negotiated with the city lord before, but the city lord still didn't lift the seal. In the end, they will definitely use withdrawing from Water City as a test. After all, one less city will affect your tax revenue. Ning Shu sipped his tea with an indifferent expression. Si Tian was quite smart, but this kind of thing could be seen by anyone with a discerning eye. You want to take over the auction house? Ning Shu put down the teacup and said directly. Si Tian looked at Xiaohua who was stupidly eating and cupped his hands. City lord must be joking. With Si Tian's financial resources, how can I take over the auction house? Ning Shu smiled and didn't say anything. He picked up his chopsticks and placed some snacks on the plate in front of Xiaohua. Since it wasn't about the auction house, why did he specially come here? If he didn't say anything, then forget it. In any case, she wouldn't lose anything whether the auction house opened or not. She had said that she would make the auction house spit out what they owed her. Si Tian looked calm. Si Tian is willing to contribute to the prosperity of Water City. Of course I believe in your ability. The casino's strength wasn't weak. Ning Shu nodded. If the auction house really wants to withdraw from Water City, I will definitely leave a spot for you. Si Tian cupped his hands. Many thanks, City Lord. This meal is on Si Tian. Many thanks. Ning Shu didn't refuse and thanked him. Shu Bai came down from upstairs. Ning Shu bowed. City Lord. Ning Shu nodded. Sit down. Si Tian stood up and cupped his hands towards Shu Bai. Shopkeeper Shu. Si Tian, did you get what you wanted? Shu Bai sat down and asked. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. So you were the one who tipped them off. Isn't this a good thing? Shu Bai fanned herself with her hand. Ning Shu nodded. It is. This matter has to be resolved. Otherwise, the merchants in Water City will be in a state of panic. However, it will take some time. The person behind the auction house hadn't appeared yet. He had already offended them by asking him to show his face. In the end, he didn't even know who the other party was. In the future, he would be targeted and confused. Now that he was riding a tiger, he had to know who the other party was. Si Tian thought for a moment and said, "The person behind the auction house is young Master Ronghua." Young Master Ronghua. What a flashy name. Ning Shu remembered this name. The people in the auction house were just probing. They wouldn't be willing to leave Water City so easily. Ning Shu ignored these people's shouts. If they had the ability, they could really leave. He wasn't afraid of such a threat at all. Unless that young Master Ronghua came looking for him. Moreover, he had to spit out the money that he didn't give him. Si Tian cupped his hands and found an excuse to leave. Ning Shu glanced at Si Tian's back and said to Shu Bai, "This person is very smart. Which one of the people here isn't smart? Si Tian does things flawlessly. If he can take over the auction house, he will definitely pay you taxes. Moreover, Si Tian isn't the kind of person who likes to show off." Shu Bai said. Ning Shu nodded. He was polite and considerate. This kind of person was obviously a two-faced person with a high EQ. "He's not doing missions anymore?" Ning Shu asked casually. Si Tian is still doing missions. He is doing business to obtain more resources. Does he look like the kind of person who is only willing to be a small merchant? Shu Bai said reservedly and politely. He didn't look like it. That was why she asked. "You seem to admire Si Tian." Ning Shu said to Shu Bai with a grin. "So much for reading novels." Chapter 1896. Falling in love with you, transmigrating canon fodder female supporting character counterattack. Since Si Tian had delivered the message and put in a good word for Si Tian, the two of them must be old acquaintances. Shu Bai looked at Ning Shu silently. "I admire you." Ning Shu laughed. "If the people in this auction house really leave, I will consider letting Si Tian manage it. At least Si Tian will follow the rules." Shu Bai fanned herself. Si Tian will be very happy to hear this. Ning Shu grinned and said to the confused Xiaohua, "Are you done eating? If you are, you can go back. Aunt Ning, can I walk around?" "Ziqing doesn't allow me to go out now," Xiaohua said to Ning Shu. "Don't call me aunt, you know. It sounds like a concubine." Ning Shu really didn't want to hear the title, concubine. Moreover, adding, concubine Ning, in front made her sound more like a concubine. "Oh, auntie." Xiaohua obediently changed the way he addressed her. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu felt that she wasn't old enough to be an auntie. "Okay, you can go anywhere you want. Ziqing is really worried about you." Mei Ziqing would probably die of exhaustion if she met such an old child. She couldn't bear to throw him away, but she would be tired if she didn't. After leaving the restaurant, Ning Shu brought Xiaohua to walk around. They bought some strange things and some ancient books from small stalls. Whatever Xiaohua took a fancy to, Ning Shu would spend money to buy it. She could be considered a tycoon now. Moreover, Xiaohua was now a mother hen. He was helping her incubate the world's origin, so she had to be more generous. She just had to coax the child more. Xiaohua didn't want to go back to the system space and wanted to stay in Ning Shu's City Lord Mansion. Ning Shu set up a barrier and let Xiaohua read in the City Lord Mansion. The City Lord Mansion's range of activity was much larger than the system space. When he passed by the auction house, he strengthened the barrier and the entire city's barrier. Ning Shu passed by the entrance of the auction house. A gust of wind blew past the entrance, blowing the fallen leaves on the ground. It looked quite desolate. Ning Shu smiled and returned to the system space. The chatting system beeped. Ning Shu sat on the sofa, hugged a pillow, and opened the chatting system. To Ning Shu's surprise, the person who sent her the message was Hongyu. Hongyu opened her mouth and asked her to remove the enchantment barrier around the auction house. She directly said that the backer of the auction house was young Master Ronghua. Although she added the word please, but Ning Shu could still feel that Hongyu's superior aura was giving out orders. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. If you have the ability, why don't you become the city lord of Water City? Ning Shu directly replied that this was a matter of Water City. It has nothing to do with you. Hongyu felt a little embarrassed. She had been kind enough to tell him that, but he didn't stop. In the end, he got himself into trouble and deserved it. Ning Shu threw Hongyu's matter to the back of her mind. Even if she wanted to talk about the auction house, she would let young Master Ronghua do it. No matter who said it, it was useless. Ning Shu wanted to find out what kind of person young Master Ronghua was. Hongyu had been snubbed by Ning Shu, so she was naturally unhappy. But now, Hongyu had no way to locate Ning Shu at all. She could only suppress her displeasure in her heart, but it didn't mean that there was no way to deal with it. Ning Shu ended the conversation with Hongyu and directly closed the chatting system. In the group of law incarnations, she was an unwelcome person. Except for occasionally peeking at the screen to see if something big had happened, Ning Shu didn't speak. Ning Shu scooped a little agarwood into the incense burner. The fragrance of the agarwood floated in the space, and when it was inhaled into his soul seemed to become transparent. Ning Shu sat cross-legged and closed her eyes to rest. She felt very comfortable. When she opened her eyes again, she seemed to be in high spirits and her soul was full of strength. There was also the joy that was active in her heart, and Ning Shu couldn't help but grin. Ning Shu pulled out the red rose on the coffee table. This red rose was still delicate and beautiful under the erosion of time, and the fragrance was overwhelming. This was just one flower. Who knew what kind of environment could grow such a flower? Ning Shu tapped with his finger, and a half-filled vase appeared. Ning Shu placed the rose in it. Ning Shu was really afraid that this beautiful and everlasting rose would wither in his hands. Stretching, Ning Shu's fighting spirit was high, and he said to 2333, "Let's go do a quest." Do a system quest? Ning Shu, is this your catchphrase? Yes, I'm just asking. What if you do it? 2333 said. Ning Shu exchanged for some fasting pills and some basic medicines. These medicines were used to reduce inflammation and reduce fever, in case of an emergency. Ning Shu's head became dizzy, and his soul began to slowly merge into a body. When she opened her eyes, she felt a piercing pain and her head was dizzy. Ning Shu sat up and rubbed her temples. She scanned her surroundings. This was a bustling palace. Smoke was coming out of the gold-plated incense burner, bringing with it a sickly sweet smell that made people feel stuffy and flustered. What kind of smell was this? This body was really tired. Ning Shu checked his pulse, and he had a slight cold. Ning Shu took 2 pills. Then he lay down and began to cultivate. The ancient realm had some spiritual energy, and he started to receive the plot. The client was called Tan Yusen, and she was the empress of the Zhou dynasty. The Tan family was a famous family, and when the current emperor was still a prince, he married Tan Yusen. It seemed that Tan Yusen was a woman who brought good fortune to her husband. Less than half a year after she married, the previous emperor passed away, and Prince Ao Tianzi succeeded to the throne. Tan Yusen successfully became the empress. Well, in any case, Tan Yusen would have plenty of wealth in this life. No matter who ascended the throne in the future, she would be the empress dowager. Tan Yusen had been married to Ao Tianzi for a year and a half, but she didn't have any children. Previously, all the concubines in the harem were also concubines. When the new emperor ascended the throne, he would definitely fill up the harem. This was also the reason why a woman was chosen in this election. This woman could be said to be Tan Yusin's nightmare. Not only Tan Yusin's nightmare, but all the women in the harem's nightmare. This woman was called Fu Min, and she was the daughter of a small official. She was lucky enough to be chosen as a concubine. However, Fu Min was a delicate woman, and she didn't care about wealth at all. She was well-read, elegant, and indifferent. She didn't fight for favor, and it seemed that she didn't want to serve the ruler of the world, Ao Tianzi. If she could choose, she would rather find someone she loved and spend the rest of her life with. She was a woman with quite a temper. Although she didn't fight for favor, she couldn't resist the emperor's love. She frequently served him in bed and rewarded him with many rare treasures. This made the women in the harem become bloodshot. There was only one emperor and one man in the harem. One teapot and so many teacups. Not every concubine could be sprinkled with some sweet dew. The women in the harem tried to harm her, but they were all dealt with by the emperor. Even with the emperor's protection, there was nothing they could do. This wasn't the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that if the emperor wanted to dote on a woman, he was the emperor, and he had the final say. Ao Tianzi didn't want to dote on the concubines in the harem. So much for reading novels. Chapter 1897. Falling in love with you, Transmigrating Canon Fodder Female Supporting Character Counterattack. The purest love is that I only want to sleep with you. Ao Tianzi didn't want to sleep with the women in the harem because Fu Min would be unhappy. Moreover, Ao Tianzi felt that he had found his true love, and the other women in the harem were trash. They stood in the way of him and his true love. Therefore, Ao Tianzi thought of a brilliant idea, which was to find someone to sleep with the concubines in the harem for him. He found a secret guard beside him to sleep with these concubines. Every time they slept, it was dark. These concubines didn't expect that the one sleeping with them was a secret guard who couldn't see the light. This was nothing. Ao Tianzi didn't know what he was thinking. He actually stood by the bed and watched the concubines and the secret guard. He was thinking, even I can't recognize you. You are indeed a flirtatious type. Ning Shu, who had taken the medicine, was sweating all over. It was sticky and uncomfortable. Receiving such a plot, Ning Shu was stunned. Finding someone to make a cuckold of him and watching from the side. What kind of mentality was this? These concubines were Ao Tianzi's concubines. Finding a secret guard to sleep with his concubines. Oh my God! Did this person have maggots in his brain? Ao Tianzi had to sleep with the noble ladies sent to the harem by various aristocratic families. Ao Tianzi, who had just ascended the throne, needed to appease the harem to appease the court. After dealing with this group of old officials, everything would be smooth. This way, the harem women could be dealt with. Other than Fu Min, who was personally slept with by Ao Tianzi, all the concubines in the harem, including the empress, Tan Yusin, were all served by secret guards. This was a shocking thing. The empress of a country was defiled by a scoundrel. If this matter was exposed, it would be the biggest joke. Even if Ao Tianzi abolished the empress in the future, it would be reasonable. Not only would Tan Yusin's reputation be ruined, but it would also implicate her maiden family, the Tan family, and make the world laugh. Even if the concubines in the harem were pregnant, they would inexplicably have a miscarriage. This was because the child wasn't Ao Tianzi's. Ao Tianzi naturally wouldn't leave a child that wasn't of his blood. There were concubines in the harem who got pregnant. Once they got pregnant, they had miscarriages. Once they got pregnant, they had miscarriages. In any case, not a single child was born. It was Tan Yusin's responsibility to have no children in the imperial harem. Every time a concubine in the imperial harem had a miscarriage, Eo Tianze would come and scold Tan Yusen, saying that Tan Yusen was not qualified to be the empress, causing the imperial harem to have no children. Tan Yusen's head was about to explode. Whenever a concubine was pregnant, she would tremble with fear. She had to check everything herself. She was even more nervous than when she was pregnant. In the end, she still had a miscarriage. There was a demon in the harem. Over time, Tan Yusen was crowned with the hat of jealousy. Every time a concubine in the harem got pregnant, wasn't it Tan Yusen's responsibility? Tan Yusen was a jealous woman who had harmed the emperor's son. The emperor was merciful and did not depose her. She had even implicated Tan Yusen's father, who was reprimanded by Eo Tianze in the imperial court. Not only that, Tan Yusen also attracted the hatred of a wave of concubines in the harem. Those concubines who lost their children all blamed Tan Yusen for the loss of their children. Tan Yusen, the empress, could be said to be a target erected by Eo Tianze to attract the attention of the women in the harem. Even if he doted on Fu Min, he did not show it. Moreover, Eo Tianze allowed the women in the harem to fight each other. Once something happened, he would run over to reprimand Tan Yusen. In any case, the responsibility of the harem was Tan Yusen. If anything happened, it was Tan Yusen's incompetence in managing the harem. It was simply a disaster to have such a boss who deliberately made things difficult for her. Tan Yusen was under pressure every day. Her body had always been in a state of subhealth. The direct symptom was a headache. She could not stand being frightened. Even a small movement in the harem would make Tan Yusen jump in fright. After that, Fu Min successfully gave birth to a child. It was the only son in the harem. Fu Min was promoted to a concubine. Fu Min was in the quagmire of the harem. She was untainted by the mud, isolated from the world, and happy. For a man to go to this extent for you, wasn't it exciting? Wasn't it touching? Wasn't it blissful? Eo Tianze gradually grasped power. Some of the important departments were also assigned to his own people. In the future, no matter what he said or did, there would not be a group of old officials nagging endlessly. After dealing with the matters of the court, it was time to deal with the matters of the harem. Eo Tianze gathered a group of concubines and directly told them about the situation in the harem. Without any explanation, he chased the group of concubines into the cold palace. The concubines were all dumbfounded. They did not know why such a thing happened. When they informed their families did not respond. It was obvious that they had abandoned the women in the harem. Tan Yusen's previous jealousy and cruelty to the imperial heir was enough to make Tan Yusen, the empress, lose her virtue. Tan Yusen was deposed and sent to the harem along with a group of concubines. Fu Min stood aloof from worldly affairs. She did not care about fame and wealth. She was an untainted lotus. She told Eo Tianze that these concubines were very pitiful in the harem. Why not send them home? The conditions in the cold palace were too harsh. All right, sending the emperor's women home had already tarnished their reputation. What was the point of sending them home? Eo Tianze felt that his women were kind. However, the emperor's women would die in the harem even if they died. He then sent someone to inform these concubines of the truth. He said that they had lost their chastity and morality and should commit suicide. When the concubines heard the truth, it was as if they were struck by lightning. They all howled. They snatched the white silk, daggers, and poisoned wine from the eunuchs and committed suicide one after another. Tan Yusen was in despair. The most heartless of all was the imperial family. The emperor's throne was filled with corpses. She and Eo Tianze were husband and wife. Why did he treat her like this? It even implicated her father to resign and live in seclusion to protect the entire Tan family. In this situation, she had no choice but to die. Tan Yusen took the poisoned wine and drank it with tears in her eyes. The poisoned wine burned her throat and stomach. It was extremely painful. After drinking the poisoned wine, she would not die for a while. Tan Yusen vomited blood. She vaguely saw Ao Tianzi standing at the entrance of the cold palace. He was dressed in luxurious clothes and stood proudly. The emperor who controlled the fate of the world had a heart as hard as iron. It was said that when a person died, their heart was exceptionally clear. Tan Yusen suddenly understood. She vomited a large mouthful of black blood and breathed her last. The dead concubines were secretly transported out of the palace and casually buried. After that, Ao Tianzi did not take in any more concubines. He made Fu Min the empress and his child the crown prince. The people sang praises of the affectionate emperor. The love between Ao Tianzi and Fu Min was sung all over the world. The people set up a plaque for Fu Min, saying that she was the most benevolent and beautiful empress in the world. The women of the people all looked up to Fu Min as a role model. They wanted their husbands to strive for the goal of never taking in concubines. In short, Fu Min was a legendary woman who received the emperor's lifelong love. The concubines in the harem rotted in the mass graves and were drowned in history. There was not a single word about them. Just read a refreshing novel. Chapter 1898. Fu Min had fulfilled an ancient woman's wish to be with a man for the rest of her life. Moreover, it was an emperor. So many people had the ability to do this. This was something that ancient women could only dream of. Ao Tianzi had done it for Fu Min. No one cared about the blood and tears of the concubines who relied on the man. Their living space had been squeezed to a very small extent. Whether they lived or died, it was all up to the emperor, or even the man. Binding the feet was to satisfy the man's abnormal and perverted mentality. At the same time, it was to keep the woman at home. Since the woman was so stupid, then there was no need for her to go out. It could be said that women were miserable, and women were miserable. Tan Yusen's wish was to deal with Ao Tianzi. Husband and wife could be incomparably loving, but they could also have deep hatred. There was no longer any relationship between husband and wife. Ning Shu rubbed his glabella. His body was especially uncomfortable. That wet and heavy feeling made him unable to lift his energy. He really wanted to wring his clothes and wring the moisture out of his body. His head was aching, and he couldn't help but feel angry. Ning Shu pressed his temples heavily. What was more miserable now was that it seemed that all the concubines in the harem, except for Fu Min, had been defiled by the shadow guards, including Tan Yusen, the empress. In order to avoid being discovered, Ao Tianzi never stayed overnight. She had already slept with the shadow guards. Even if it was to protect herself, she had to deal with Ao Tianzi. There was no room for discussion. Fu Min and all the other women in the harem were dependent on Ao Tianzi. Without Ao Tianzi, Fu Min was nothing. As long as Ao Tianzi didn't abolish her, she had the right to manage the harem. Fu Min had never harmed anyone. She was incomparably clean in the harem. Ao Tianzi had blocked the swords and knives of the harem for her. Not everyone had the right to be clean and beautiful. Who asked it not to be true love? Ning Shu pressed his glabella until it turned red. His body was very uncomfortable. The current Tan Yusen was not even 20 years old. She had the body of a 40-year-old. The pressure was so great that it caused problems with her body. She trembled every day and was in a state of mental tension at all times. What followed was a nervous breakdown. She couldn't eat well and couldn't sleep well. She felt like she was floating all day and would ascend to immortality at any time. If he cultivated every day in this state, he would die sooner or later. Being the empress was tough. As a woman who took care of her husband's family, she couldn't be jealous. She had to be magnanimous. If anything happened, it would be the empress' responsibility. It was a thankless job. This little bit of power in his hands would be taken away by the woman that the emperor loved. His power shield was in cooldown. Fuck, my head hurts. His entire body felt uncomfortable. It was wet and uncomfortable, and his body was very wet. With a soft creak, the door opened. Her personal palace maid, Xie, walked in. Seeing Ning Shu sit up, she hurriedly put down the basin in her hands and squeezed out a handkerchief to wipe Ning Shu's face. Nyang Nyang, wipe your face to make it more refreshing. Ning Shu made a sound of acknowledgement and said to Xie, who was wiping his face, call an imperial physician over for Ben Gong. Ben Gong's body is very tired. As the empress, she couldn't run and exercise every day. She had to ensure that she was dignified, noble, and generous. If she had nowhere to vent her stress, wouldn't her body get sick? Moreover, Ning Shu realized that this was because his body was very weak and his heart was beating very fast. Nyang Nyang, are you not feeling well? Xie hurriedly asked. Ning Shu, my entire body is not feeling well. It's like I'm soaking in water. Is Nyang Nyang pregnant? Xie asked with a smile of exultation. Ning Shu, anyone in the harem could get pregnant, but it was unlikely for her to get pregnant. Because the pressure was too great, getting pregnant was very difficult. Moreover, being pregnant was even more painful. You might feel your belly with a happy expression, but not long after, you might fall down. With a plop, the child would be gone. Having and then losing it was an even more painful thing. Call an imperial physician. Ben Gong's body is not feeling well. Ning Shu rubbed the space between her eyebrows and mobilized the spiritual energy in her dantian to strengthen her body. Xie quickly found an imperial physician. Ning Shu stretched out her wrist to let the imperial physician take her pulse. She said, Imperial physician Li, Ben Gong has been in a daze all day and has no strength. Prescribed some medicine for Ben Gong to replenish qi and blood. Nyang Nyang, you've been overthinking things and hurt your spleen and stomach. This humble subject will prescribe some medicine to be taken with the 100-flower pill. Imperial physician Li cupped his hands. Ning Shu nodded. Xie's face was tangled as she asked Imperial physician Li, Imperial physician, other than these, does Nyang Nyang have anything else? Xie couldn't directly ask if she was pregnant with a dragon child. The imperial concubine has suffered severe injuries. She needs to recuperate and think less, said Imperial physician Li. Xie was a little disappointed. It seemed that she was not pregnant. After Xie sent Imperial physician Li away, she came back and said to Ning Shu, Nyang Nyang. This kind of thing depends on fate. When fate comes, it will happen. This kind of thing can't be forced. If I let a secret guard fucking me again, my surname won't be Ning. What kind of mood did Ao Tianzi have when he watched his concubine having sex with her secret guard? Ning Shu's face was cold and indifferent. For a concubine to have an affair with an outsider was a crime that could lead to the extermination of the entire family. The women in the imperial harem had all been defiled by the secret guards, and they had all been schemed against by their own men. Now, Ao Tianzi was keeping a low profile and waiting for the right opportunity to get rid of all these women. Nyang Nyang, today is the first day of the month. According to the rules, His Majesty will definitely come to our palace. Xie said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded. Ask the kitchen to prepare some light dishes. Something simple will do. Now, Ning Shu didn't want to eat greasy food as he wasn't feeling well. As for Ao Tianzi coming at night, Ning Shu didn't care at all. Ning Shu said to Xie, go and get the medicine. Instead of worrying about what Ao Tianzi would eat at night, it was better to have enough energy to deal with Ao Tianzi. As for Fu Min, all the pampering and love were given by men. Thunder and rain were the king's grace. To Fu Min, it was rain and dew, but to others, it was thunder and lightning. There was no other way, because glory and life were all in Ao Tianzi's hands. To deal with Ao Tianzi, Fu Min was just an ordinary woman in the imperial harem. Therefore, they focused on dealing with Ao Tianzi. Yes. She, left. Ning Shu drank water and pondered. Well, she was now the empress, so she shouldn't use this method of climbing over walls to assassinate people. It wouldn't be good if she was thought to be an assassin. Besides, the spiritual energy here was still very little compared to other worlds. It was good enough that the spiritual energy here could nourish the body, but it was still difficult to climb over walls. In addition, the suppression of the plane was more serious. This was just an ordinary ancient plane. Even if there were chivalrous people, they would only have mediocre skills. Ning Shu kept rubbing his forehead. This irritating feeling made Ning Shu want to smash things. He had to nourish his body first. She, came back with the medicine and decocted it in the palace's small kitchen. Although there were people in the imperial kitchen responsible for decocting the medicine, there were too many people. Chapter 1899. Letting the people in the imperial kitchen brew the medicine was an act of seeking death. Not only were there hundreds of concubines in the imperial harem, but there were also so many palace servants. It was as tiring as managing a large company. No wonder Tan Yusin's body became like this. Ning Shu took 100-flower pill and drank a bowl of bitter medicine. This kind of medicine couldn't be effective just by drinking a bowl. Ning Shu didn't want to be a model worker now. Massage my back for me. Ning Shu's maid said. The maid immediately came over and massaged Ning Shu. Ning Shu closed her eyes slightly and operated a peerless martial art in her body. Compared to the enormous power in the previous world, the spiritual energy in this world was like silk threads. There was no pleasure in swallowing it in big mouthfuls. There was no feeling of turbulent sea water. The sun went down and the whole world fell into darkness. Lights were lit everywhere in the palace. After dressing up, Ning Shu stood at the door waiting for Ao Tianzi's arrival, looking like an empress. Ao Tianzi came late. Ning Shu's legs were swollen from standing too long. Ao Tianzi was wearing ordinary clothes, but his eyes were still clear and bright. He had the aura of an emperor. Ning Shu bowed to Ao Tianzi. Ao Tianzi helped Ning Shu symbolically, but their hands didn't touch. The women in the imperial harem were all enemies of Ao Tianzi. If it weren't for the stability of the court, these women would have been thrown out of the palace like trash. Ning Shu grinned and followed Ao Tianzi into the palace. Ning Shu said, Your Majesty, dinner is ready. Please eat. Ning Shu released her spiritual energy as she spoke. She saw the shadow guards around the palace. These shadow guards couldn't be seen in public. They followed the emperor to protect his safety. Now, other than protecting the emperor and doing some shady things for the emperor, the secret guards also had a new mission, which was to visit the concubines in the harem for Ao Tianzi. He was not the emperor, but he enjoyed the treatment of an emperor. He enjoyed a harem of 3,000 beauties, all of whom were beauties of various styles. His life was worth it. He even slept with the mother of a nation. As soon as he thought of this, Ning Shu felt unhappy. Moreover, Ning Shu saw a shadow guard squatting on a tree branch with a tent underneath. Fuck, you're really proactive. Ning Shu directly used his spiritual power to kick the shadow guard down the tree. With a plop, even the house could hear it clearly. What's going on? Go out and take a look. Ning Shu said hastily. Ao Tianzi's expression changed slightly as he changed the topic. He sniffed and said, Why is there a smell of medicine? Ning Shu said, My body is very tired, so I asked the imperial physician to prescribe some medicine to calm my nerves. Since the empress is not feeling well, you should rest more. Don't you feel tired wearing such a grand dress? Ao Tianzi saw Ning Shu's golden hairpin shining dazzlingly and her red clothes. On such a hot day, looking at the color made him feel even hotter. She had flaming red lips and a lot of powder on her face. Why did she still put on the airs of an empress in front of him? Wasn't she putting the cart before the horse? She was his woman first, then the empress. She was so stupid that she couldn't be saved. Ning Shu didn't seem to realize Ao Tianzi's displeasure. She said with a smile, I have to welcome the emperor. I can't be unkempt and impolite in front of the emperor. If the person was wrong, everything would be wrong. What should Ao Tianzi say? Should he say that she was unkempt and impolite? He was inflexible and didn't know how to flirt. If he was with Fu Min, he would definitely be more comfortable than here. Needless to say, there was no need to talk about poetry. In any case, it made Ao Tianzi's heart flustered. He couldn't find a reason to be angry. Ao Tianzi smelled the faint bitter smell of medicine in the room and felt uncomfortable. He stood up and said, since the Empress is not feeling well, you should rest well. Is your Majesty leaving? Ning Shu asked foolishly. Not staying for dinner. You can eat, Empress. We aren't too hungry. Ao Tianzi flung his sleeves and stepped over the threshold. Ning Shu caught up with Ao Tianzi. Your Majesty, I will send you out. Ning Shu sent Ao Tianzi to the entrance of Pepper Palace Hall and then bowed. Take care, Your Majesty. She was anxious, but as a servant, it wasn't appropriate for her to interrupt when her master was talking. You can go back, Empress. Ao Tianzi left without stopping to drink the medicine. When Ao Tianzi was some distance away from the Pepper Temple, Ning Shu released a needle as thin as a cow's hair from her sleeve. Under the shroud of darkness, the needle accurately shot into Ao Tianzi's waist under the control of Ning Shu's mental energy. Ao Tianzi suddenly felt something huge hit his waist and he fell to the ground without a care for his image. The eunuch next to Ao Tianzi was stunned and shouted sharply, Your Majesty. Ning Shu was about to turn around and return to the hall when he heard this voice. He and Shi looked at each other and hurriedly walked over. He said to the eunuch, Hurry up and call the imperial physician. Yes, yes. The eunuch ran away in panic. Ning Shu used all his strength to help Ao Tianzi up. Just as he did, his hand slipped and Ao Tianzi fell to the ground again. I deserve to die, I deserve to die. Ning Shu said to the eunuch whose hands were numb, Hurry up and help me bring His Majesty into the room. Ao Tianzi sucked in a breath of cold air. He felt that his waist was already numb. What the hell? What hit him? Ao Tianzi was carried back to Ning Shu's palace hall and lay on the bed. Ao Tianzi's face was a little pale and his brows were tightly knitted. Ning Shu comforted Ao Tianzi, Your Majesty, please wait a little longer. The imperial physician will be here soon. The imperial physician was a little different from the imperial physician. The imperial physician specialized in serving the emperor. Ning Shu squeezed out a handkerchief and wiped the yellowish sweat on Ao Tianzi's face. He asked, Did Your Majesty encounter an assassin? If it was an assassin, how could there be no trace of him at all? How could he have been hit by something invisible? Soon, the imperial physician arrived with a box. Just as he was about to salute, Ao Tianzi said with a yellowish face, No need for formalities. Let me take a look. Ao Tianzi felt that his lower body was numb and he could not feel his legs anymore. The imperial physician took Ao Tianzi's pulse. The room was quiet and seemed very depressing. How is it? Ao Tianzi asked. The imperial physician lifted Ao Tianzi's clothes and looked at his waist. There were no obvious injuries, which made the imperial physician feel troubled. Your Majesty, Your Majesty's kidney is a little weak. You need to take care of your body in the future, the imperial physician said while wiping his sweat. Something wrong with his kidney? Ao Tianzi was stunned. Men relied on their kidneys to support themselves. He rarely slept with the women in his harem. How could there be something wrong with his kidney? If there was something wrong with his kidney, why couldn't he feel his lower body? Chapter 1900. Ao Tianzi's misfortune fell from the sky. He was walking properly when he suddenly sprained his waist. Ao Tianzi decided to find an enlightened monk to perform a ritual. The news of Ao Tianzi's mishap immediately spread to all the palaces and courtyards. Some of the concubines rushed to Ning Shu's Pepper Palace Hall to see the emperor. They also wanted to make their presence known. Ning Shu didn't refuse any of them. She let all the beautiful girls in. Then, the originally spacious inner hall became a little crowded because of these girls. One by one, they blocked the side of the bed, which made Ao Tianzi extremely annoyed. Moreover, this concubine had various fragrances on her body. Her clothes were fragrant with perfume. The fragrances of perfume, and rouge all rushed into Ao Tianzi's nostrils, giving him a headache. The concubines asked about his well-being and chattered non-stop, which almost made Ao Tianzi's head explode. It was annoying to have too many women, especially when these women were after the power in his hands. He felt even more irritated. Ning Shu stood at the side with a smile. She was tolerant and magnanimous, the model of a graceful and luxurious empress. She went to Ning Shu's ear and said, "Your Highness, Shuangyun Palace sent a maid to ask what happened." Ning Shu raised her eyebrows slightly. If it weren't for Fu Min's intelligence, Ao Tianzi would have been annoyed by the many concubines coming over to greet him. She thought it would be better to talk to Ao Tianzi alone than to fight for attention. There was no love for no reason, and no hatred for no reason. Men liked women who had a bit of a temper, but who could see the situation clearly and understand the situation. "Your Highness." She asked Ning Shu, "How should we reply?" Ning Shu said indifferently, "Just say that you don't know." "I'm fine. Go back to your palaces and stay there." Ao Tianzi finally couldn't stand these chattering women and scolded. "Your Majesty, shut up. Do you think I'm not annoyed enough?" Ao Tianzi asked these women to leave. Seeing Ao Tianzi's dark expression, the concubines had no choice but to bow and leave. When the imperial concubines all left, Ning Shu approached the bed and asked, "Emperor, how do you feel now?" "Ugh." Ao Tianzi moved his body and felt that his body was not as numb as before. However, there was a sore feeling in his waist. It didn't hurt that much anymore. "It's okay. I feel much better." Ning Shu revealed a gentle smile, "It's good that your Majesty is fine." Although Ning Shu's smile was beautiful, Ao Tianzi didn't even look at Ning Shu. Instead, he said to the eunuch beside him, "Carry me back." "Yes, sir." Ao Tianzi was placed on a stretcher, and he staggered back to his bedroom. Ning Shu was still smiling as he watched Ao Tianzi being carried away. She looked at Ning Shu and said, "Nyang Nyang, why didn't you let His Majesty stay? That way, Nyang Nyang can take care of His Majesty." Ning Shu's mouth twitched. "You're asking for trouble. You worked yourself to death and didn't even get a good word. You're tired like a dog. Moreover, the other party isn't willing to let you take care of him." Ning Shu smiled elegantly, "Things like taking care of His Majesty should be left to the imperial physicians. People like us who don't know anything about medicine shouldn't blindly cause trouble." "Yes, sir." She immediately said. Ning Shu returned to the hall. There was food on the table. She said, "Nyang Nyang, this servant will ask the servants to prepare some more." "No need." Ning Shu ate and then took a walk in his palace. As for Ao Tianzi, Ning Shu didn't care at all. In the future, Ao Tianzi would be the representative of short and fast. He would be a silver spear. The kidney energy that poured out damaged Ao Tianzi's body. Now, everyone was suffering from a stress-induced syndrome. They were all infertile. After taking a walk, Ning Shu sweated and felt a little better. He rested for a while and washed up. Then, he lied on the bed and hypnotized himself. I want to sleep. Sleep. He also silently chanted the clear mind mantra in his heart. It was really because he didn't have a good night's sleep. Even if he fell asleep, the constant anxiety made him have endless dreams. When he woke up in the morning, his body was very tired. He was even more tired than if he didn't sleep. Eating delicacies and wearing brocade clothes didn't necessarily mean happiness. In short, everyone had to pay attention and take responsibility for their position. Ning Shu fell asleep in a daze. The next morning, he was woken up by her. Ning Shu opened his eyes. His eyes were stinging and his body was exhausted. Damn it, sub-health was really terrible. He couldn't die, but it was unbearable. Ning Shu mobilized spiritual energy to repair his body. Your Highness, it's time to get up. The concubines in the imperial harem will come to pay their respects in a while. Cleaned Ning Shu's face. Ning Shu rubbed his brows, took a deep breath, and asked, "What's the news from His Majesty?" "His Majesty didn't go to court this morning," she said. Then, she dressed Ning Shu with a few palace maids. Looking at Ning Shu's blurred image in the bronze mirror, he smiled slightly, touched his temples, drank some water, and ate something simple. Then, he went to the front hall. The concubines in the imperial harem all came. Ning Shu bowed and then asked how the emperor was. Ning Shu just said that it was fine. The emperor would be fine after a period of rest. Ning Shu slashed at Fu Min, who was sitting on the side and keeping a low profile. Fu Min looked like a crystal-clear person. She was a little smart, but she didn't have a lively personality. She was very clever. Ning Shu smiled and said to Fu Min, "Min Zhao Yi, have you seen His Majesty?" Min Zhao Yi stood and bowed, "His Majesty, Qinxia has not seen His Majesty." "Even you haven't seen His Majesty," Ning Shu said casually, causing the surrounding concubines to look at Min Zhao Yi with strange gazes. Fu Min felt it, but she didn't show it and didn't say anything. Fu Min really was a woman who knew when to advance and retreat. Ning Shu took back his gaze from Fu Min and then ordered the concubines in the imperial harem to calm down. The emperor needed to rest. Ugh! A concubine covered her mouth, her face pale. Ning Shu's eyes flashed and asked, "Xian Fei, what's wrong?" "Empress, Qinxia feels disgusted." Xian Fei's face was very pale and she looked very haggard. Ning Shu couldn't control the smile on his face. He said to quickly go find a Tai. There must be something good. Yes. Quickly had someone call for a Tai. The other concubines also guessed a possibility. They all had looks of jealousy as they twisted their handkerchiefs and stared at Xian Fei's belly. Ning Shu glanced at Fu Min. Fu Min didn't show any jealousy. She just looked sad. Clearly, she thought that this child was Ao Tianzi's. Did Ao Tianzi not tell Fu Min about this? Perhaps he had waited for the dust to settle before telling Fu Min about it. Are you touched? Fu Min thought, you're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.